Yo, Atlas speaking and welcome to part 5 of What If I Was Reborn in the Naruto world as Obito Uchiha with the Universal Gamer System. Let the tale begin. Chapter 81, A Twist in the Plot. Obito leaned in close to Hanzo's ear and whispered softly. Danzo-sama says he's taking full responsibility for this mess? Hanzo, however, could no longer hear him. He had already lost all signs of life, collapsing lifelessly in Obito's arms. Once hailed as a pinnacle of the shinobi world. The Hanzo of the salamander who once overpowered the Sannin had fallen. Obito let Hanzo's body go and then raised his sword high, charging at the aim nin across from him. For Danzo-sama's great cause, kill these aim nin. Behind him, several root shinobi suddenly froze, their eyes going blank. A moment later, they drew their blades without hesitation and followed Obito into battle. Stop! Stop! Who told you to attack? Danzo's confidant shouted in panic, but his cries were futile. Especially when people started to fall on both sides. This battle was already beyond stopping. The Konoha Umbu sent by Danzo this time were almost all root shinobi under his command. And Obito had no qualms about exploiting them. The elite shinobi of Root and Amegakure clashed in a fierce battle, the chaos making it hard to tell friend from foe. As the instigator, Obito couldn't help but click his tongue in amusement. This is insane. Root's official roster only has 17 people, yet there's clearly a 3-digit crowd here. With that, Obito subtly altered his appearance and slipped out of the chaotic fray. He grabbed Conan's hand and said, exasperated, "Why are you just standing there? Run already!" Huh? Before Conan could react, Obito pulled her down with him, leaping away from the battlefield. By now, few people cared about Yahiko and the others anymore. Only a small group chased after Obito and Conan. Obito turned his head, took a breath, and spat out a fireball. The pursuers vanished instantly, reduced to nothing but ashes, not even needing a coffin. The two of them rushed all the way to where Yahiko and Nagato were waiting. "Who the hell are you?" Yahiko asked suspiciously. Obito hurriedly replied, "No time to explain. We need to leave now." He grabbed Conan's hand again and dashed ahead. Yahiko and Nagato exchanged a glance and quickly followed. As the four fled, Root Shinobi and Aim Nin continued their pursuit. But Yahiko and Nagato were no pushovers, quickly dealing with their attackers while on the move. While running, Obito suddenly stopped and turned toward a certain direction. A shadowy figure flinched and disappeared into the ground. Damn it! How can his sensory abilities be this sharp? The figure muttered. And who the hell is this guy? He's ruined everything. Obito's brows furrowed slightly. Madara, or rather, Black Zetsu, had entered the stage. But Obito's frown eased, and a smirk formed at the corners of his lips. "Oh, you love manipulating people from the shadows, don't you? You think your schemes are flawless, every move under your control? How's that working out for you now?" Once the four had escaped the ambush, Yahiko finally couldn't hold back any longer. "Hero, could you, maybe let go of Conan's hand?" Obito froze for a moment, glanced at the blushing Conan beside him, and realized he had been holding her hand the entire time. He let out an awkward laugh and scratched his head. Sorry. Things were a bit urgent earlier, so I wasn't paying attention." Seeing Obito finally release his beloved's hand, Yahiko's expression softened somewhat. The three exchanged glances, sharing the same feeling of narrowly escaping death. Yahiko looked at Obito and said sincerely, "Thank you for helping us earlier. The three of us owe you our lives." He wasn't an idiot and could easily guess that Obito had orchestrated much of the chaos. Obito smiled. "I didn't just save you for your sake. I want to save this world from despair. It's your existence that made me see a glimmer of hope in the darkness." Obito's words left Yahiko and the others with a favorable impression of him. Conan looked at Obito courteously. "Who are you, really? Have we met before?" Obito hesitated. Should he reveal the truth to them or adopt an alias for his wandering ways? Just then, the system's voice rang out in his mind. Ding! No need to overthink, host. Here's a question for you. A glowing screen appeared in front of Obito. Option 1, Honesty breeds trust. Reveal your true identity to Yahiko and the others. Reward, unlock follow-up missions. Option 2, keep things mysterious. Come up with a cool-sounding alias to introduce yourself. Reward, name +1. Option 3, laugh as you walk away dramatically, telling Yahiko and the others, our fates aren't aligned yet. Until next time. Reward, Doom Pulsin. Doom Pulsin, extremely toxic yet surprisingly delicious. A must-have for traveling, murder, and silencing witnesses. Obito was stunned. This was the first time he'd seen such blatantly leading options from the system. There was only one sane choice here. Follow the system's lead, of course. Option 1 it is. Obito removed his mask, revealing a youthful face. He looks about the same age as us, Nagato thought. After a moment of contemplation, Obito spoke. My name is Uchiha Obito, a shinobi of Konoha. Also, I am a disciple or rather, grand disciple of Jiraiya-sama. In other words, we share the same teacher. The trio's expressions were filled with shock. This boy is also one of Jiraiya-sensei's students? Nagato couldn't help but ask. How is Jiraiya-sensei? Obito thought of Jiraiya's carefree lifestyle and nodded confidently. Jiraiya-sama lives every day to the fullest and has a great time. Though in his heart, he added silently. If you don't rebel later, Jiraiya-sama might be even happier. Yahiko pulled his companions back, subtly shaking his head. Having just experienced betrayal, he wasn't ready to trust anyone completely yet. Placing Konan and Nagato behind him, Yahiko narrowed his eyes at Obito. Even though you saved us, isn't it a bit too convenient that we share the same teacher? How can you prove your ethnicity? Chapter 82, A Suspicious Yahiko. Obito spoke calmly, without a hint of urgency. This is simple. Wait here for a moment. With that, he clapped his hands together and entered sage mode. The orange eyeshadow and toad-like pupils were unmistakable features. How about this? Isn't this enough to prove my identity? He said smugly. However, the three in front of him, Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato, looked utterly confused. Konan tilted her head and asked bluntly. What are you doing? Obito scratched his head awkwardly, dispelling sage mode. Could it be? They'd never seen the sage mode from Mount Maiboku? I guess that's possible. Damn it! Show-off attempt failed. Obito bit his thumb and started forming seals slowly. Looks like I'll have to use that to prove my identity. Jiraiya-sensei signed a summoning contract with Mount Maiboku. You're aware of this, right? The three exchanged glances and nodded. Obito sighed in relief. Alright, then no problem. Summoning technique. He slammed his hand onto the ground. In the next moment, a moderately sized toad appeared before them. Where's my food? Gameshin scanned the surroundings, quickly piecing the situation together when he spotted Obito. With a long sigh, the toad spoke. Uchiha Obito, huh? Why do you always summon me during mealtime? Seeing that there was no immediate danger, Gameshin muttered. Alright, I still have half a bowl of rice left. I'm heading back. Before Obito could even respond, Gameshin vanished with a puff of smoke. Yahiko. Nagato. Konan. Obito cleared his throat awkwardly. Ahem. So, now you should believe that I trained under Jiraiya-sensei, right? Yahiko relaxed visibly, nodding apologetically. Yes, sorry about that. After Hanzo's betrayal, I've been wary of everyone's intentions. Obito chuckled lightly. It's fine. I understand. In truth, Obito saving Yahiko and the others wasn't entirely altruistic. He had his own agenda, though it wasn't malicious. He sought to form a partnership. Thanks to the connection with Jiraiya, the distance between the four narrowed considerably. Finally, the three war orphans let down their guard. Konan tearfully embraced Yahiko and Nagato. Yahiko, Nagato, I thought I'd never see you again. Yahiko gently patted her back. It's okay, Konan. It's all over now. We're all safe. After the emotional reunion, the four sat down together and started chatting. Konan asked curiously, Is Jiraiya-sensei settled down now? Obito shook his head. No. Jiraiya-sama is still wandering around, without a fixed home. Yahiko sighed in exasperation. At his age, he still hasn't settled down? Obito smirked mischievously. Want to hear a secret? Actually, Jiraiya-sama has someone he likes. Nagato's eyes widened in shock. Are really? Obito nodded confidently. Of course. And you all know her. That person is. He paused for dramatic effect. Who? Konan leaned forward, her anticipation palpable. Yahiko, irritated, smacked Obito on the shoulder. Stop stalling and just say it. Obito burst out laughing. It's Tsunade-sama. Nagato's jaw dropped. Yahiko was equally dumbfounded. This can't be true, right? But Konan clapped her hands in realization. I knew it! I always felt Jiraiya-sensei had feelings for Tsunade-sama. And then Konan launched into a lengthy analysis. Details omitted for sanity's sake. Yahiko eventually cut her off. All right. Enough, Konan. Reluctantly, she stopped, her enthusiasm undimmed. Well? Don't you think my analysis makes sense? Nagato was stunned. Konan, you've only met Tsunade-sama a few times. How did you come up with all that? Konan stuck out her tongue playfully. Because I have sharp eyes. The three men exchanged glances, all thinking the same thing. More like you're just too nosy. Even the Rinnegan isn't as sharp as her gossip radar. Yahiko leaned back, scratching his head. But if Jiraiya-sensei likes Tsunade-sama, why hasn't he confessed? Nagato nodded. Yeah, they already have a good relationship, don't they? Obito thought for a moment. Probably because he's afraid Tsunade-sama might get mad and accidentally punch him to death? The three nodded in unison. That sounded about right. Yahiko suddenly stood up. No way! As Jiraiya-sensei's disciples, we have to help him solve his love life? Konan immediately agreed. Right! I'm with Yahiko. Nagato spoke up softly. I think so too. Obito thumped his chest confidently. Count me in. I'd love to help bring them together. The four of them enthusiastically began plotting. Within minutes, they had not only Jiraiya's love life but also his burial plans sorted out. For example, a sea burial, ahem. After a while, Yahiko casually asked. By the way, aren't you from Konoha? Why are you suddenly in the land of rain? The cheerful mood turned slightly somber. Konan and Nagato fell silent. Obito hesitated, then said, It's a long story. Meeting you was partly a coincidence. Your country's rain princess is currently in Konoha. We have a decent relationship. Rain princess? Yahiko's expression shifted slightly but said nothing, gesturing for Obito to continue. Understanding the cue, Obito explained. One night, I overheard her talking to two rain shinobi. That's how I learned Hanzo planned to target Akatsuki. I knew Akatsuki was your creation and that you're Jiraiya-sensei's students. So, Obito laid out the story convincingly while cleverly omitting certain key details. Like how he knew their connection to Jiraiya. As long as the general timeline checked out, no one would question the minor inconsistencies. Chapter 83, Nagato's Grief. Yahiko remained silent, quietly processing the information Obito had provided. Years ago, Yuki had vanished without a trace. Some claimed the royal family had hidden her away, others believed Hanzo had eliminated her. I never expected her to end up in Konoha. Conan murmured softly. Obito sighed. She probably left because she had lost all hope for the land of rain, perhaps even despair. That's why she chose to go. The three lowered their heads, their eyes clouded with sorrow. Having grown up in the land of rain, they were all too familiar with its endless struggles. If they had been given a choice, they too would have wanted to be born in a peaceful country bathed in sunlight. Seeing their spirits sink, Obito sighed inwardly. This news hit them hard. I'll need to give them some encouragement. Clearing his throat, Obito spoke with fervor. But isn't the land of rain lucky to have you three? Now is the perfect time to transform it. With Hanzo the salamander gone, don't you think you have the chance to turn this country into a true sanctuary? All you need is to give Yuki even a glimmer of hope. If she sees it, I'm sure she'll return to help you rebuild this nation. Under Obito's impassioned words, the three raised their heads again, hope flickering in their eyes. Seeing their renewed determination, Obito felt confident. The will of fire never fails me where words go, flames of resolve follow. Now it was time to sow the seeds of his own ideas. Obito looked directly into their eyes and said, Like you, I want to change this world to see peace spread across every land. But on the road to peace, war is inevitable. You experience this yourselves. Without enough strength, no one will care about the ideals of a few unknown dreamers. Yahiko and the others nodded silently. Though idealists, they weren't naive enough to think dialogue alone could solve every problem. Akatsuki's current standing wasn't achieved through words but through countless battles. Wherever they went, they tried diplomacy first. If it worked, everyone was happy. If not, prepare for your funerals. They knew that by eliminating those who incited conflict, peace would naturally follow. Nagato broke the silence, asking, What do you think we should do next? Conan and Yahiko turned to Obito, waiting for his answer. Obito coughed lightly and said, I have an idea, just a rough one, but let's discuss it together. Right now, Amegakure is leaderless. After the battle with Danzo's forces, its remaining strength must be significantly weakened. Yahiko's eyes lit up, and he licked his dry lips. You mean? Obito nodded. Exactly. I think we should take control of Amegakure and consolidate the Land of Rain under one banner, Akatsuki's banner. That way, the Land of Rain will speak with one voice, and that voice will be the pursuit of peace. The trio exchanged glances, excitement gleaming in their eyes. It was indeed a golden opportunity. Conan couldn't help but ask, and after we take Amegakure? After that. Obito paused to think before continuing. A strategically located and rejuvenated Land of Rain would become a valuable ally for the great nations. We could align with one of them while negotiating peace agreements with the other two. Yahiko frowned slightly. And which nation do you propose we align with? The Land of Fire? Obito didn't hesitate. Yes. The Land of Fire is the best choice. Yuki, Jiraiya-sama, and even I have ties to the Land of Fire. Moreover, Konoha has never been the aggressor in any major war. That's rare among the great nations you must have heard of. Yahiko's expression softened. He had to admit that Obito made sense. The Land of Fire truly seemed like the ideal ally for the Land of Rain. But all that could wait. First, they needed to take Amegakure. Yahiko glanced at the darkened sky and suddenly realized something. We should head back. Otherwise, Juzo and Daibutsu might start worrying. Obito looked up at the same sky, puzzled at how Yahiko judged time in a land perpetually shrouded in clouds. Nagato spoke thoughtfully, good thing we didn't bring everyone along, if we had. Hearing this, Yahiko and Conan's faces turned grim with lingering fear. Obito opened his mouth as if to speak but stopped himself. If nothing unexpected had happened, Yahiko's companions were likely already gone. Yahiko stood up, grinning, let's head back. I want to introduce my new friend to everyone. Conan smiled as well. Yes, Juzo and Obito seem similar in temperament, they'll probably get along. A reunion with old friends, narrowly escaping danger, such moments should have been among the most joyous in life. If only. Nagato patted Obito on the shoulder, his tone puzzled. What's wrong, Obito? Feeling shy? Everyone is easy to get along with. Obito forced a smile. Not at all. Let's go. Watching Yahiko and the others' smiles, Obito remained silent. The four returned to the Akatsuki base. The empty hall greeted them, and Yahiko scratched his head. Where is everyone? Nagato's thoughts raced before he suddenly spoke. Could they have gone looking for us? Yahiko's expression shifted. The two locked eyes before dashing outside in a panic. Conan and Obito quickly followed. They ran into a dense forest when Yahiko and Nagato stopped abruptly, their bodies trembling as they stared ahead. Yahiko? Nagato? What's wrong? Conan asked, confused. When she reached their side, tears streamed down her face. What? What happened here? The ground was stained red with blood, devastation stretching as far as the eye could see. Familiar faces, friends who had fought and laughed with them, now lay lifeless, their bodies cold and stiff. Daibutsu, ever kind heart, Juzo, always mischievous, and even Kawaki, who once tried to court Conan. Aha! Nagato's anguished roar shattered the silence. A terrifying wave of energy erupted from him, radiating outward. Boom! Caught off guard, Yahiko and Conan were flung back by the sudden shockwave. Obito quickly phased out of solid form, reappearing behind Yahiko to catch him. Conan, however, wasn't so lucky. She hurtled back over 10 meters, her flight stopped only after crashing through several trees. Chapter 84, The System Sets Its Sights on Nagato. Yahiko struggled to lift himself from Obito's arms, staggering toward Conan. Conan! Are you okay? I'm fine. She replied weakly, though her head was buzzing incessantly. Unable to stand, Conan collapsed into Yahiko's arms, completely drained. Meanwhile, Nagato, who had unleashed that terrifying power moments ago, appeared utterly spent. His legs gave out, and he fell limply toward the ground. Thankfully, Obito rushed over just in time, catching him in his arms. Nagato's eyes burned with fury, their depths like an abyss that threatened to consume anyone who dared to meet his gaze. Juzo! Daibutsu! How dare they? I'll kill them all! Obito's heart sank as he quickly slapped Nagato across the face with a sharp smack. Nagato turned his icy gaze toward Obito, his expression unreadable. He seemed to be considering whether to reward Obito with a searing Shinra Tensei. Shermata! A chill ran down Obito's spine as countless thoughts raced through his mind. He clutched his chest dramatically, sighed deeply, and lamented, his voice filled with pained sincerity. Get a grip, Nagator. You hate them so much, you fought them for so long, and yet now you want to become one of them? No dream is worth sacrificing yourself to this extent. Obito's heartfelt words struck a chord within Nagato, breaking through his anger. A fleeting moment of clarity swept through him as he collapsed further into himself, whispering in guilt, I couldn't control that power again. And I hurt everyone. At this point, Conan began to recover slightly. Despite her fragile state, her resilience was evident. Supported by Yahiko, she approached Nagato, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. It's not your fault, Nagato. It's those eyes. They're the source of it all. Nagato curled into a ball, burying his face in his arms. I'm afraid of my own power. Jiraiya Sensei taught me ninjutsu to help me control this strength. But now that Sensei's gone, I can't stop myself. Squatting beside him, Conan wrapped her arms around Nagato in a comforting embrace. Even though Sensei isn't with us anymore, you still have Yahiko and me. We'll always be here for you. Nagato remained silent, the weight of his guilt palpable. Yahiko raised his voice, his tone firm and unwavering. Nagato, you're destined to change this country, no, this entire world. You'll become the bridge to peace, and we'll be your support pillars. Now, pull yourself together. Nagato slowly lifted his head, tears welling in his eyes. Can I really do it? But... Akatsuki. Akatsuki is gone. Yahiko and Conan's heart sank. Today's series of tragedies had pushed them beyond the brink of grief. They had barely escaped with their lives, only to realize that their comrades, the brothers and sisters who had fought and grown with them, were all gone. Now, only the three of them remained. Even the ever-optimistic Yahiko couldn't entirely mask his despair. Obito sighed deeply before speaking with solemn conviction. As long as the three of you live, as long as your will endures, Akatsuki will never vanish. I know you feel hopeless, like there's nothing but darkness around you, no light in sight. But isn't Akatsuki supposed to be the light that pierces through the darkness? The people of the Land of Rain are counting on you. Yahiko clenched his fists tightly, his gaze resolute. Obito is right. We can't let Juzo and Daibutsu and the others' sacrifices be in vain. We can't afford to fall now. We must carry their hopes forward. Though the grief lingered, Yahiko and Conan found a measure of solace in their renewed resolve. Meanwhile, Obito turned his gaze toward Nagato's eyes, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. Speaking of which. Nagato's eyes and the power he just unleashed. Yahiko began to explain. Nagato's eyes are unique. They are the legendary Rinnegan said to have belonged to the Sage of Six Paths. He hesitated briefly before continuing. Someone once sought us out because of Nagato's Rinnegan. They claimed their mission was to guide those who awakened these eyes, ensuring they used them correctly. They also said that once Nagato fully mastered the Rinnegan's power, he would bring salvation to our world. Obito's eyes narrowed slightly. There was no need to guess. This person must have been sent by Uchiha Madara. No point asking what they looked like. Zetsu could have morphed their face any way he wanted. And what happened to them? Obito asked. We chased them off, Conan replied. Yahiko suspected they wanted to use us. They definitely wanted to use us, Yahiko affirmed with confidence. Obito's expression grew grim. Have you considered that this tragedy might have been orchestrated by them? Their goal might have been to push Nagato to awaken the Rinnegan's full power through his grief? Yahiko froze in shock. The kid's words, they're not impossible. Hanzo's target had always been Yahiko. If he wanted to eliminate the entire Akatsuki, he could have done so in one fell swoop instead of singling Yahiko out. It doesn't add up. Why? Why? Nagato's voice broke into a pained roar. Why was I cursed with these eyes? I never asked for this power. Obito sympathized with Nagato's anguish, but part of him couldn't help thinking how ironic it was. Do you know how many people would kill for those eyes? You don't want them, but others would die to have them. Just then, the system's mechanical voice interrupted his thoughts, nearly startling him out of his skin. Ding! Pop quiz incoming! Can I not just read the question, system? Why the drama? Irritated, Obito turned his attention to the glowing screen. Important notice, the choices you make here will impact the main storyline. Proceed with caution. Important notice, failure to complete this mission will permanently lock the Hashirama Cell Development questline. Another one of these missions? Obito frowned as he scanned the options. Extract half of Nagato's Rinnegan power with his consent. Reward, current chakra reserves doubled. Seize both of Nagato's Rinnegan eyes while he's off guard and offer them to the system. Reward, Kamet, Heavenly Push. Be a man of principle, take only one Rinnegan. Reward, current chakra reserves doubled. Kamui, Heavenly Push, a devastating ocular technique. Creates a powerful shockwave centered on the user, repelling all objects and jutsu within range while inflicting damage. The system really has it out for Nagato, huh? Obito grumbled internally. Chapter 85, I'm telling the truth. You're suggesting we dig out Nagato's eyes? Obito's expression didn't waver as his gaze shifted to Nagato, standing quietly beside him. It wasn't just Nagato, neither Konan nor Yahiko seemed wary of him either. If he wanted, he could easily strike them down in an instant. Yahiko and Konan, with their backs turned, would be defenseless. Then, taking Nagato's life and plucking out his Rinnegan would be child's play. If he buried the three of them here in Amegakure, no one would ever know what had happened today. It would even be a once-and-for-all solution to disrupt the schemes of both Madara and Black Zetsu. Better not, Obito muttered to himself, looking at the three who trusted him completely. Slowly, he dismissed the idea. It wasn't that he was some benevolent saint. If he had to choose between Nagato and saving the world, Nagato would die without a moment's hesitation. He wouldn't flinch. But why bother when he had the system? A few more years with it, and he'd have everything he needed. No need for such backhanded tactics now. By then, anyone who dared defy him could face the wrath of Susanoo. He could level a nation with ease. Besides, any stolen Rinnegan would have to be handed over to the system anyway. Would killing all three of them be worth it just for a skill reward? Sure, the reward was enticing. It would patch up the weakness in his intangible form by giving him a solid offensive option. But it just wasn't necessary. Still, Obito couldn't deny it. The power of the Rinnegan was tempting. I wonder how many chapters it'll take before I unlock my own Rinnegan, Obito mused, glancing at the glowing screen before him. He filled in the answer sheet for the system's latest question. After making his choice, Obito spoke casually. That reminds me, I know a bit about the secrets of the Rinnegan. It might help you, Nagato. His words instantly drew the attention of all three. Nagato stared at him, anticipation shining in his eyes. Yahiko immediately grabbed Obito by the shoulder, his voice urgent. What secrets? Come on, spill it, little brother. Konan, on the other hand, tugged at Yahiko's sleeve, her tone gentle but firm. Yahiko, calm down. Let him explain at his own pace. Yahiko hesitated before releasing Obito, rubbing the back of his head sheepishly. Sorry about that, little brother. I got carried away. It's fine, Yahiko simple, Obito said with a small smile. No need to apologize. He paused briefly before continuing. In the secret histories passed down in the Uchiha clan, there are records of the Rinnegan. They call it the Samsara Eye, the most exalted of all dojutsu. It grants its wielder the power to create and destroy worlds. However, Obito added, his tone growing serious, few people know that the Rinnegan actually evolves from the Sharingan. The records mention an Uchiha ancestor who awakened the Rinnegan through the fusion of yin and yang energies. Yahiko and the others were spellbound, their eyes wide with amazement. The idea that the Uchiha clan had such detailed records about the Rinnegan was beyond anything they'd imagined. Could there also be clues on how to master it? Obito paused deliberately, heightening the suspense. Go on, little brother. Yahiko couldn't contain himself, urging Obito to continue. All right, Obito replied, holding up his hands in mock surrender. No need to rush, Yahiko-senpai. He turned somber again. Here's the thing, by rights, Nagato-senpai shouldn't have been able to awaken the Rinnegan on his own. That means his eyes might not be his own. Konan gasped. You're saying? Obito nodded grimly. Exactly. Nagato-senpai likely has Uzumaki lineage. His immense chakra reserves make him an ideal vessel for the Rinnegan. My guess? Someone transplanted those eyes into him when he was still a child, for their own purposes. Nagato's head lowered at those words, his expression darkening. He'd always thought himself unique, chosen by fate. But now it seemed he was nothing more than a pawn in someone else's plan. Yahiko clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked audibly. Whoever did this. It has to be that guy who approached us before. Damn it! Treating Nagato like a toolit's unforgivable. Obito's gaze flickered with a trace of complexity as he watched Yahiko's fury and Nagato's dejection. Their trust in him ran so deep that they didn't doubt his words for a second. And yet, here he was, feeding them lies to accomplish his own goals. This is really something, he thought, half in amusement, half in guilt. Konan gently placed a hand on Nagato's shoulder, trying to comfort him. Then she turned to Obito, her tone serious. "Little brother, what do you think we should do?" Obito's voice grew low, steady. "I have an idea, one that could help Nagato-senpai master his eyes and turn the tables on the one who set this in motion. But—" He hesitated, as if reluctant to speak. Yahiko nearly jumped out of his seat. "My dear little brother, would you stop leaving us hanging? Just say it already." Even Nagato nodded in agreement. Obito's cliffhangers were unbearable. Obito sighed, a wry smile on his face. Fine. I'll explain everything in one go, and then we can decide together." He continued, "The power of the Rinnegan is immense, but that also makes it incredibly difficult to control. Using its abilities drains chakra at an alarming rate, and over time, it even saps the user's life force." Nagato silently acknowledged the truth in those words. Every time he used the Rinnegan, he felt utterly drained, as if his very essence was being hollowed out. Obito pressed on. "My bloodline allows me to extract a portion of the Rinnegan's power. With this, Nagato-senpai could gain full control over his eyes without suffering the backlash. He wouldn't need to worry about chakra depletion or shortening his lifespan. However," Obito added gravely, "the extraction process is irreversible. Once that portion of power is removed, Nagato-senpai would lose it permanently. That's why I said this method is extreme. What do you all think?" Yahiko and Konan turned to Nagato, waiting for his response. Nagato's conflicted expression revealed his hesitation but also his resolve. In the end, wasn't it better to wield a manageable power than to cling to one that might destroy him? After all, this wasn't his own strength to begin with. Yahiko, however, voiced a concern. "Little brother, what happens to the extracted power? Where does it go?" Obito didn't hesitate. His voice was clear, unwavering. "I understand your worry, Yahiko-senpai. The truth is, I don't have the capacity to awaken the Rinnegan yet. There's no way I could keep such power for myself. Most of it will be devoured by a certain entity I can't describe." Chapter 86, Joining the Akatsuki. Obito's words were undeniably true. Extracting some of the Rinnegan's ocular power would benefit both sides without causing harm. The only small deception he employed was concealing the existence of his system. Moved by Obito's sincere demeanor, Yahiko stopped questioning and turned to Nagato. "Nagato, what do you think?" Nagato responded without hesitation. "I agree. Take it from me." He had long grown weary of a life he couldn't control. "Just like how I ignore risks and browse certain, websites." Nagato lived in constant fear, afraid that one day, he might lose control of his powers. Afraid that his strength might hurt Konan and Yahiko. He didn't want to live like this anymore. He wanted to fully master the Rinnegan. To seize control of his destiny. To ensure the heavens no longer dictated his life. Obito shifted his gaze to Konan, who met his eyes and gave a subtle nod. "Well, since the three of you have decided, let your junior begin." Obito slowly walked up to Nagato, silently consulting the system in his mind. "System, how do I proceed?" The system buzzed faintly in his head. "Host, have you watched Naruto, Shippuden?" Obito almost choked. "Of course. What kind of dumb question is that?" The system let out a casual "oh." Then, just like Itachi's forehead poke, place your fingers on his forehead. Resigned, Obito raised two fingers and lightly pressed them against Nagato's brow. A strange suction force began emanating from his fingertips, gradually drawing out Nagato's ocular energy. Nagato could feel the immense power of his Rinnegan pouring out through a small, steady stream. After several minutes, Obito exhaled and withdrew his hand. "Done!" In his mind, the system notification chimed. "Choice complete." Reward, chakra reserves doubled. Yahiko nervously approached Nagato. That's it? Nagato, how are you feeling? Can you stand? Conan also watched Nagato with concern, fearing something might have gone wrong during the process. Give me a moment. Nagato closed his eyes, sensing the changes within himself. A light flickered in his eyes. It feels like I can control this power freely now. If the Rinnegan once felt like a 100-pound hammer he could only lift when overwhelmed with rage, leaving him utterly drained, now it felt like a 50-pound hammer. He could lift it easily, swing it, even spin it gracefully. In a word, liberating. Really? That's amazing! Conan exclaimed, pulling Nagato into a hug. Yahiko joined in, wrapping them both tightly. For a brief moment, the pain of losing their companion seemed to ease. Obito, standing aside, quietly assessed the changes within himself. His chakra reserves, once at a modest 3 points, had surged to nearly 8. What did that mean? System, about 0.08 Naruto chakra levels. Shut it. Obito buried his frustration and joined Yahiko, Nagato, and Conan in burying their fallen comrades in the forest. Staring at the gravestones etched with familiar names, Yahiko silently vowed. Everyone, your sacrifices won't be in vain. The Akatsuki will become the first light piercing this darkness. On the way back, Yahiko gave a self-deprecating chuckle. I used to despise this country for its endless tears, but now I genuinely want to save it. It reminds me too much of my former self, always crying, helpless. I can't just stand by and ignore it. Conan gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Yahiko. He shook his head. I'm fine. Nagato, how about you? Nagato smiled faintly. I'm doing well, Yahiko. Obito watched the exchange silently. The bond between Yahiko, Nagato, and Conan was undeniably deep. But their relationships were also complicated. Having grown up together, their camaraderie carried hints of other emotions. Yahiko had openly shown affection for Conan in episode 566. Nagato once admitted Conan seemed to have feelings for Yahiko. And yet, in the very next episode, Yahiko told Conan to direct her care and attention toward Nagato instead. A tangled web, indeed. Obito figured even the trio themselves might not fully understand their feelings for one another. The four returned to the Akatsuki base, now eerily empty. The desolation of the once bustling space left Yahiko and the others with a profound sense of loss. However, their determination remained unshaken. Yahiko turned to Obito and asked, So what do you think we should do next? Conan and Nagato also looked to Obito. Over the past few days, they had not only come to trust him but also started to see him as their anchor. Without hesitation, Obito replied, We should wait for Nagato to fully master the Rinnegan's powers before launching an attack on Amegakure. Yahiko nodded, though his brows furrowed slightly. That makes sense, but we can't wait too long. If Amegakure elects a new leader and regroups its forces, we'll lose the upper hand. Obito thought for a moment and said, Based on my knowledge of the Rinnegan, half a month should suffice. I'll train alongside Nagato during this time to ensure he's ready. Yahiko pondered briefly before nodding. Half a month it is. In the meantime, I'll take Conan to scout for potential allies willing to join us. Obito silently mused, 4 of us are more than enough to storm Amegakure. Out loud, he replied, Understood. Yahiko placed a firm hand on Obito's shoulder. Thank you, Junior, for everything you've done for us. Obito met his earnest gaze, feeling a twinge of guilt. Don't mention it, Yahiko-senpai. We share the same dream, after all. It's only natural to support each other? Conan suddenly suggested. Why not officially join the Akatsuki? Even as a part-time member, it'd be nice to have you. Nagato smiled and added. I think that's a great idea. What do you think, Yahiko? Yahiko threw an arm around Obito's shoulders. I'm all for it. What do you say? Faced with their eager expressions, Obito nodded resolutely. From today onward, I, Uchiha Obito, am a member of the Akatsuki. Chapter 87, A Conversation with the System. The border between the land of fire and the land of grass. In a vast underground palace, Madara sat on a stone throne with his eyes closed, listening to Black Zetsu recount the events of the recent mission. His hand rhythmically tapped against his thigh, but his face betrayed no emotion. After a long pause, Madara opened his eyes, a glint of sharp light flashing through them. So, you're saying that an unknown individual rescued Nagato and the others from the hands of Amegakure and Konoha? Black Zetsu bowed slightly, answering with respect, Yes, Madara-sama. This individual's origins are unclear. As far as I can tell, no one of this caliber exists in the current shinobi world. Madara snorted, his tone filled with disdain. I, Uchiha Madara, have always looked down on those who skulk in the shadows, afraid to reveal their true selves. Black Zetsu glanced at Madara but kept his thoughts to himself, and yet, isn't that exactly what you're doing now? Madara frowned and fell silent. The vast palace sank into an oppressive quiet. The failure of the plan weighed on his mind. He couldn't move freely in the shinobi world in his current state, and that realization gnawed at him. Pressing his fingers to his temple, Madara rubbed it as if to soothe a growing headache. After a moment, he dropped his hand and cast a piercing gaze at Black Zetsu. If this piece has been lost, then we'll replace it with another. Black Zetsu, go find me a child from the Uchiha clan, someone with the potential to carry the burden of our grand ambitions. Black Zetsu nodded with a sly smile. Understood, Madara-sama. With the third shinobi war still raging, finding a suitable candidate shouldn't be too difficult. With that thought, Black Zetsu sank into the ground and vanished into the distance. Amegakure. The base of the Akatsuki. Obito stood watching Nagato train diligently not far away, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. The weakened version of the Rinnegan Nagato had been given wasn't too difficult for him to control. The strain it placed on his body had also been significantly reduced. Moreover, while the power of the ocular techniques had decreased, the cooldown times were also much shorter. From a certain perspective, it was hard to say whether Nagato had been weakened or strengthened. It really depended on how the developers spun it. Obito withdrew his attention from the scene and delved into his mind, addressing the system. System, I've been thinking about something lately. I want to ask you directly. The following contains some system-related explanations. If it's not your cup of tea, feel free to skip ahead. The system shivered slightly, an ominous feeling washing over it, though it tried to maintain a calm front. Ask away, host. Obito adjusted his non-existent glasses and spoke. If I can't obtain Nagato's ocular powers, wouldn't that make the rewards for the missions a joke? Yet, you included them, which means you predicted I'd encounter Nagato. Or rather, you've been steering me toward this outcome through the choices you've provided. The system silently cursed, damn it, since when did this brat get so sharp? Ding! Everything this system does is for your benefit, host. Unlike those shady, exploitative systems, I genuinely care about you, GGR. Obito let out a cold laugh, his eyes narrowing dangerously. I get the reasoning, but I want to know one thing. Did you already anticipate that Mount Myaboku would approach me and that I'd eventually choose to align with them? Oh. The system's metaphorical data streams nearly crashed from the pressure. Seeing the system's silence, Obito's suspicions deepened. So that snake-crawling mission you assigned me earlier, was that just a ploy to mess with me? The system stiffened but forced itself to respond. Host, that's not entirely fair. At the very least, it'll make your future life with Rin more harmonious. Obito's face darkened. Harmonious? Is that really what I should be worrying about at my age? The system hesitated, then reluctantly admitted, you do have a point there. Fine, I'll let it slide this time. Obito paused, then asked, but why? As a system, aren't you supposed to be omnipotent? Why do some choices require specific conditions to be met before they can be triggered? The system steadied itself and began explaining. Host, have you read any system-based novels in your past life? Obito nodded proudly. If it wasn't related to studying, I read it day and night. The system was speechless, unsure why he seemed so pleased with himself. Well, that simplifies things. Every world has its own independent will, often referred to in literature as the heavens or heavenly way. This force dictates the natural order, ensuring everything runs according to its predetermined course. To defy this order, one must pay a price, a bribe, if you will. Obito nodded slightly, signaling the system to continue. Uchiha Obito, you are a pivotal character in the Naruto storyline. With my assistance, you can alter the course of events to some extent. However, each change causes ripples, disturbing the natural order. This allows me, your system, to extract certain benefits during the upheaval. Obito frowned. So you can't just hand out rewards willy-nilly. You need to balance? The system sent a simple emoji to Obito's mind, *, bingo. For instance, when you formed a contract with Mount Myaboku and learned their sage techniques, the heavens deemed this a logical progression. In turn, extracting some power from the Rinnegan to awaken your own in the future was also considered reasonable. Obito rubbed his chin in thought. So as long as my actions seem plausible, you can reduce the cost of bending the rules? Exactly, host. These days, systems are everywhere. Competition is fierce, and saving resources is no easy task. You understand, right? Obito rolled his eyes. Fine, fine. I already said I forgive you. But you're the first system I've seen that plays the pity card with its host. The conversation with the system answered many of Obito's lingering doubts. No wonder his growth always seemed capped within certain limits. No wonder some events seemed inevitable, no matter how hard he tried to change them. Still, a sly smile crept onto Obito's face. As long as he kept getting stronger, he'd make his goals reasonable enough to achieve. Nagato's excited voice broke his train of thought. Yahiko! Konan! You're back! Obito turned to see Yahiko and Konan returning, accompanied by a group of 30 to 40 people. The smile on Obito's face widened. Even without the protagonist's halo or the system's assistance, there would always be those willing to step forward and change the world. Chapter 88, The Fall of Amegakure. A crowd approached in the distance. Obito raised an arm and placed an orange mask over his face. He stood silently, exuding an air of aloofness. After a brief conversation with Nagato, Yahiko left him and Konan behind and walked toward Obito. Upon seeing the mask, Yahiko raised an eyebrow. Obito, what's with the mask? He asked, puzzled. Obito waved a hand, signaling Yahiko to lower his voice. Yahiko-senpai, I'd prefer to keep my identity under wraps for now, Obito said calmly. From now on, when others are around, just call me Tobo. Yahiko muttered under his breath, testing the name. Obito. Tob. You reversed your name? Fine, but why Toby? A gleam flickered in Obito's eyes behind the mask. Because I intend to use Toby's identity to deal with Shimura Danzo. If Jiraiya Sensei were to learn my true identity, it would put him in a difficult position. Yahiko's expression immediately grew serious. To deal with Danzo. Understood, Tobo. I'll inform Nagato and Konan about this later. Obito nodded in acknowledgement before scanning the group nearby. Yahiko-senpai, can you vouch for these people you've gathered? Yahiko smiled confidently. Of course. Many of them already supported the Akatsuki in their hearts but hadn't officially joined due to various circumstances. Obito gave a thumbs up. Yahiko-senpai, you truly are the soul of the Akatsuki. The four reunited, exchanging light-hearted banter before gathering to discuss their plan to raid Amegakure. Konan turned to Nagato. Nagato, how is your control over the Rinnegan's power now? Nagato smiled faintly, exuding confidence. Thanks to Toby's guidance, I've mastered it. It no longer burdens me. Conan's eyes softened with relief as she said sincerely, "That's wonderful to hear." Yahiko unfurled a map of Amegakure. "This is a strategic map I managed to obtain. It may not be entirely accurate, but it should serve as a reference." Obito raised an eyebrow under his mask, silently marveling. "Impressive. Yahiko even managed to infiltrate Amegakure to get this." Pointing to the map center, Yahiko explained, "Toby will use his dojutsu to infiltrate the village with all of us. We'll then launch an attack here." He marked the location and continued, "From there, we'll split into 3 teams. I'll lead one with Conan, while Toby and Nagato will each lead their own. Our targets are these 3 key locations." He circled the 3 areas. "Once these 4 strongholds are neutralized, Amegakure will crumble. Afterward, we regroup and mop up any remaining resistance. Everyone clear on the plan?" Conan and Nagato both nodded firmly. Obito grinned under his mask. "Crystal clear, Yahiko simple. We'll get the job done." Yahiko rolled his eyes before adding, "Remember, whichever team finishes first will assist the others. This needs to be a swift and decisive victory." After meticulously reviewing the plan, the group assembled their forces, dividing them into 3 squads and briefing them on the operation. Amegakure. Obito materialized like a phantom inside a tall building. This should be the temporary command center. Moments later, figures began appearing silently, one by one. The Earth's sight would have been enough to convince any observer they were witnessing a haunting. The thought crossed Obito's mind. Would people think even ghosts have to work overtime for meetings? The squads moved out in an orderly fashion, heading in 3 directions. The first scream shattered the silence, marking the battle's start. Confusion rippled through the Rain Ninja. How did the enemy infiltrate? Why didn't the barrier team sound the alarm? It's the Akatsuki. That's Yahiko, their leader. Damn it! And that masked one, what is he, a ghost? He's untouchable. And that red-haired guy, he can reflect jutsu. Don't know, stop pulling me in. Aya! Within 10 minutes, Yahiko's team had overrun the command center. Looking at his companions, Yahiko said, "From here on, the enemy will be on high alert. Stay sharp, everyone. I want you all back safely. Move out!" Obito immediately activated Camel, transporting his squad into his pocket dimension and re-emerging closer to their objective. Nagato, watching from afar, muttered enviously, "Toby's dojutsu is truly remarkable." Conan cast him a sidelong glance, silently thinking. "You're one to talk, with the Rinnegan at your disposal." Yahiko and Conan led their squad west, while Nagato's team headed east. As soon as Nagato's team surfaced, a barrage of ninjutsu rained down on them. Nagato calmly pressed his hands together. Shinra Tensei. A massive shockwave obliterated the incoming attacks and sent nearby Rain Ninja flying. His squad advanced, dispatching foes with precision. One member marveled, "I've never seen a battle so effortless." Another chimed in, "Right? It's like Nagato-sama just claps his hands, and the enemies are done for." Nagato pressed forward relentlessly, relying solely on Shinra Tensei and Bansho Tenin. It was less of a fight and more of a one-sided massacre. Meanwhile, Amegakure's forces, already weakened from battles with Root, were ill-prepared to face Nagato's overwhelming might. And not far away, another powerhouse wreaked havoc. Obito unleashed a torrent of molten lava with a single exhalation. Asterisk lava release, Mega Hot Soup. A roaring stream of molten rock surged forward, consuming everything in its path. The Rain Ninja didn't even have time to scream as they melted into nothingness. Obito wiped his mouth and reveled in the sensation of abundant chakra. "Ah, this feels amazing." He threw his head back and laughed maniacally. From this moment on, let the world know true pain. Chapter 89, Endings and Plans. Obito's figure slowly hovered midair, his magnetic voice reverberating through the streets. Feel pain. Embrace pain. Understand pain. Except pain. Only those who know pain can comprehend the true meaning of peace. Behind him, murmurs started to spread among his teammates. Am I the only one who thinks our leader has a few screws loose? Be more confident. Drop the I think. Annoyed, Obito turned his head sharply, glaring at his team before looking back at the distant Amnin heading their way. It's time to use that move. Obito raised his hand, forming seals as his deep voice cut through the air. Fire style. A colossal flaming serpent materialized, spiraling toward the Amnin. Terrifying whirlpool-like flames engulfed the enemy almost instantly, incinerating them within seconds. Having an overpowered teammate sure made missions more efficient. Obito's team and Nagato's squad swiftly completed the tasks Yahiko had assigned. Now, they were rushing to support Yahiko and Konan's group. To be fair, while Yahiko and Konan were strong, they still lagged behind the duo with special eyes. But that's just how things worked in Naruto. Early Naruto, with effort, you can surpass geniuses. Mid to late Naruto, forget what we said earlier. Even someone like Rock Lee, who almost booted the plot into a different ending, was still a proper taijutsu genius. 3 teams unite. When all 3 squads regrouped, the pressure on Yahiko and Konan vanished instantly. Almighty pull! Alright, that's enough showing off, Nagato. Even Obito didn't feel the need to lift a finger, silently watching Nagato perform solo. Yahiko clicked his tongue. So this is the power of the Rinnegan, huh? Man, that's enviable. With just 2 seemingly ordinary yet devastating abilities, Nagato could handle 99.99% of Naruto's enemies. Bansho Tenin Shinra Tensei, Bansho Tenin Shinra Tensei. Rinse and repeat. Smooth sailing all the way. After successfully securing 4 outposts, the Amnin were thoroughly defeated, and the remnants of Amegakure were in shambles. Standing amidst the battered village, Yahiko couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion. From this moment onward, the Akatsuki would rise to a whole new height. Border of the land of fire and the land of grass. In a grand underground palace, Madara sat leisurely on a stone throne, his gaze fixed on the figure of Black Zetsu. Black Zetsu, you did well this time. What's the name of that child? Black Zetsu bowed respectfully. Her name is Uchiha Setsuna. Madara raised an eyebrow, murmuring curiously. Oh? Uchiha Setsuna. Why does that name sound so familiar? Black Zetsu smiled slyly. Her grandfather was one of your most loyal followers and perfectly inherited your will. Her father took pride in this and named her after him. Understanding dawned on Madara, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. So, this child is destined to be my heir. Black Zetsu hesitated for a moment before adding cautiously. But the young Setsuna doesn't seem to share that sentiment. She's tried to escape multiple times already. Madara frowned, looking at Black Zetsu. Didn't you say her family was wiped out during this war? What's she holding on to? Black Zetsu replied. Asterisk, according to White Zetsu, her childhood friend is still fighting on the front lines. So, Madara tapped his fingers against the armrest of his throne, his tone calm yet filled with a profound sadness. The longer one lives, the clearer they see, reality is nothing but helplessness, pain, and emptiness. It seems this child has yet to understand the cruel truth of this world. We'll help her see it. Only then will she willingly join me in creating a true world. Black Zetsu grinned widely, his white teeth stark against his dark face. What's the plan, Madara-sama? Back in Amegakure. The recently war-torn village was now a picture of devastation. Obito stood silently, reflecting. To be reborn, one must first face destruction. To achieve peace, one must endure war. How contradictory, yet fascinating, this world was. Rebuilding Amegakure, recruiting new members, and handling administrative matters, all of that was left to Yahiko and his team. After all, that was their expertise. With Nagato's overwhelming attacks plowing the field, the surviving Amnin had no fight left in them. Yahiko wasn't planning to wipe them out either. A change in leadership was all it took. What reason was there to resist? This new boss was far more benevolent than the last. Other than a few die-hard Hanzo loyalists, most Ainin had no desire to continue fighting. 1 week later, Obito stood in the newly established command center of Amegakure, as it was now known, Akatsuki village. Yahiko looked at Obito reluctantly. "Obito, are you really leaving?" Nagato chimed in. "Stay. Help us out." Obito smiled helplessly. "There's still a mess in Konoha waiting for me to clean up." The two exchanged a glance, knowing they couldn't stop him. At that moment, Conan's icy voice broke in. "Kill Danzo." Obito grinned brightly. "Of course. He won't live much longer." Letting Danzo die from a bridge collapse was far too merciful. And since Obito had vowed to kill him within 10 years, he certainly wouldn't go back on his word. Seeing Obito's resolve, Yahiko asked, "What about Yuki?" Obito thought for a moment before replying. "Here's my plan. With the wars in the Land of Rain subsiding, we should focus on stabilizing the region. Strengthening both sides will be our priority." Yahiko nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. We'll work to rebuild the Land of Rain and ensure the Akatsuki's light shines across every corner, letting everyone bask in the sunlight again." Obito inclined his head slightly. "As for my side, my other teacher will likely become the next Hokage. Once Danzo is gone, Konoha will stabilize immediately. At that point, I'll contact Yuki, and together, we'll work toward fostering peace and cooperation between our nations." With their plan set, the four felt a spark of hope for the future. In Obito's mind, a familiar tune began to play. "Dare to ask where the road leads, the road lies beneath your feet, don't be sad, don't be afraid." Chapter 90, Reunion in Konoha. Land of Rain, outside the Akatsuki's hidden village. Yahiko placed a hand on Obito's shoulder, patting him lightly. "The journey back is long and treacherous. Take care of yourself." Obito grinned sheepishly. "With my camel, I can warp straight to Konoha in a flash." Zoom, and I'm there? Yahiko sighed and let go of his shoulder. "You just ruined the heartfelt farewell mood I was going for." Still smiling, Obito replied, "But it's not really a farewell. I can visit anytime. We could even grab a meal before I head back." Nagato chuckled enviously. "Your dojutsu sure is convenient." All three of them simultaneously rolled their eyes at Nagato. "If you keep showing off like this, don't be surprised if you get punched someday." "By the way," Obito suddenly said, his tone turning serious, "stay vigilant. That figure in the shadows might strike again." Yahiko nodded firmly. "Don't worry. We'll be cautious." Nagato's expression darkened as a cold, humorless smile appeared on his lips. "In fact, I hope they come. It'll be a chance to avenge Daibutsu and the others." Nagato. Conan sighed softly, giving his shoulder a gentle squeeze. Obito pulled out a small piece of paper and handed it to Nagato. "Nagato, you're still mastering the Rinnegan's abilities. This has information on some of its other techniques. Practice when you have time." Taking the note, Nagato smiled faintly. "Thanks. I'll make good use of this." Conan stepped forward and gave Obito a warm hug. "Thank you for everything you've done for us." Under Yahiko's piercing gaze and Nagato's abyssal stare, Obito wisely released Conan immediately. "No need to thank me. Don't forget, I'm part of the Akatsuki now too." Seeing this, Yahiko and Nagato's smiles returned, their cold, oppressive aura vanishing as if it had never existed. "Well then, take care." Obito waved, vanishing in an instant. Yahiko watched him disappear before turning back. "Come on, let's head back. We've got plenty of work waiting for us." Conan, smiling slyly, sidled up to Yahiko. "Yahiko, were you jealous when I hugged Obito just now?" Yahiko laughed awkwardly. "Of course not. Nagato clicked his tongue. I can vouch for it, he totally was. He looked like he wanted to kill Obito with his eyes. Blushing furiously, Yahiko punched Nagato in mock anger. You're talking nonsense. Conan, don't listen to him. I wasn't jealous. The three young comrades laughed and teased as they made their way back to the Akatsuki's village. Under the rare sunny skies, their shadows stretched long on the ground. Land of Fire, Konoha. Kakashi stared at the flying thunder god canal that Minato-sensei had left him, feeling a rare sense of frustration. I still can't figure out this formula. If only I had his eyes, he muttered under his breath. Even just one of them would do. As he brooded, a familiar voice suddenly startled him. Kakashi, what are you doing here by yourself? Obito? Kakashi jumped, nearly dropping the kunal. A sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead. Did he hear what I just said? Obito squinted suspiciously at Kakashi, making him squirm. Why are you staring at me like that? Kakashi asked nervously. Obito smirked. You're hiding something, aren't you? Spill it. I am not hiding anything. Kakashi stammered, his guilt all too evident. Obito shrugged casually. All right, if you say so. Looking around to ensure no one was watching, Obito pulled a book out from his cloak and handed it to Kakashi. Here, something good for you. Find a quiet place and enjoy it. Kakashi eyed the book wardly. What is it? Is it decent? The book was none other than the one Jiraiya had once gifted Obito, a notorious literary masterpiece. Obito, having thoroughly enjoyed it multiple times, now had no place to hide it since his return to Konoha. Better to share the treasure than risk Rin finding it. Clearing his throat, Obito said solemnly, Of course it's not decent. Kakashi shook his head. Then I'm not interested. I need to focus on training. Obito chuckled knowingly. Come on, Kakashi. I know you better than that. Leaning closer, Obito whispered with mock reverence, This book. It's so indecent, it's genius. Kakashi hesitated, his curiosity piqued despite himself. One hand slowly reached out toward the book. No, Kakashi. You can't give in. You promised to train hard, to surpass Obito. Don't do it! But the temptation was too great. With a resigned sigh, Kakashi grabbed the book, his face lighting up like a child's on their birthday. Just then. Kakashi! Obito! I've been looking for you two everywhere. What are you doing here? Oh no! Rin's sudden voice startled them. Both hastily pulled back their hands, and the book fell to the ground with a loud thud. Before Obito could react, Rin bent down, picked it up, and curiously opened it. What's this? No! No! Obito's mind raced at lightning speed. This is Kakashi's book. He was just about to give it to me. Kakashi gawped at Obito. What? You. This book. It's not. Rin's face turned beet red as she snapped the book shut. Kakashi, I know we're all grown up now, and everyone has their hobbies, but... Rin, wait! It's not what you think. Kakashi blurted out, his mind reeling as Obito struggled to suppress his laughter. Chapter 91, Uchiha Madara. Rin shoved the book she was holding into Kakashi's arms, her expression slightly complicated as she spoke. But you can't. Our Obito-kun is so innocent. You can't corrupt him. With that, Rin grabbed Obito's hand and started pulling him away. Let's go, Obito-kun. Obito exchanged a glance with Kakashi, his eyes filled with an apologetic look. Sorry, bro. This one's on you. You're the scapegoat now. Besides, you don't have a girlfriend. You don't need to worry about your image. Thanks, buddy. You're the best. Kakashi stood there, disheveled in the breeze, staring at their retreating figures. Obito, innocent? That word and Obito don't belong in the same sentence. And you're worried I'll corrupt him? He's the one who led me down the road of no return. Kakashi clenched the book in his hands, his face twitching with frustration. To hell with this stupid book, he growled. But after opening it and glancing through a couple of pages, this book is amazing. Meanwhile, Rin led Obito hurriedly away. Along the path, she glanced at him nervously and asked, Obito-kun, you didn't see what was inside that book just now, right? Obito shook his head furiously. No, not at all. Of course, he'd already read that book back and forth countless times back in the Land of Rain. He was just planning to give it away today naturally, he hadn't bothered to look at it again. Rin sighed in relief, patting her chest. Phew, that's a relief. Then, meeting Obito's gaze, she fumbled for words. Obito-kun, when you're with Kakashi in the future, just be careful not to let him influence you, alright? She stomped her foot, visibly frustrated with her own inability to articulate. Ah, you know what I mean, don't you? Obito nodded earnestly. I get it. Totally understand. Satisfied, Rin beamed and tugged on Obito's collar, rising on her tiptoes to whisper in his ear. Obito-kun is such a good boy. Here's your reward. Obito chuckled sheepishly, his heart practically leaping with joy. All thanks to Kakashi for this moment. I'll have to bring him 2 more books later to properly thank him. That evening, after sharing dinner with Rin and escorting her home, Obito wandered alone into a small forest. Sitting atop a tall tree, he closed his eyes and sank into deep thought. Is it time to act against Danzo? With my current strength, taking him down shouldn't be an issue. But after assassinating Danzo, what kind of consequences will follow? And how should I handle the fallout? Obito frowned. I can't be sure. Not yet. It's better to wait. I need the right opportunity. Opening his eyes, a faint gleam of light flashed within his gaze. It's close. That day isn't far away. At the border of the Land of Fire and the Land of Grass, within a grand underground palace, the vast, empty hall had one new occupant. A girl, no older than 13 or 14, stood silently. Half of her body was covered in a white substance, and her disheveled black hair cascaded over her delicate shoulders. Her refined features and striking beauty were marred by an aura of destruction that made her utterly chilling. Uchiha Setsuna. The once vivid light in her eyes had faded, replaced by a hollow stillness. Blood-red tears streaked her face as she stared coldly at the white-haired man seated before her. Uchiha Madara, she said flatly. Tell me how to create the world of my dreams. Madara shook his head, unimpressed by the rudeness of his junior. Such an impolite young one. He muttered before beckoning her forward. No need to thank me. Come here. From this moment on, you are the savior of this world. Setsuna stepped forward, her bare feet making no sound on the cold floor. Madara swept the hair from his face, his Sharingan glowing ominously. Look into my eyes. The moment their gazes met, Setsuna was pulled into the illusionary world Madara had crafted. Within this realm, Madara began recounting the story of the Sage of Six Paths and the Ten Tails, eventually explaining the Eye of the Moon plan. Setsuna frowned slightly. Gather the scattered-tailed beasts and summon the legendary Ten Tails? Madara nodded. Precisely. With Hashirama's cells coursing through your body, you should be able to control the Geto statue, even without awakening the Rinnegan. Setsuna scoffed softly but gave a slight nod. I understand. And this Nagato you mentioned, what about him? Madara closed his eyes as he answered. Nagato is a descendant of the Uzumaki clan. Aside from me, he is the only one who can summon the Geto statue. I had intended to cultivate him into a savior who could change this world, but it seems he lacks the resolve. One day, if the opportunity arises, retrieve my eyes from him. You are this world's true savior. Setsuna's expression hardened. I will, she said coldly. Even if it's only for him, she vowed silently. Over the next few days, Madara passed down all his knowledge to Setsuna, everything he had held back. The Uchiha's forbidden techniques. The 6 paths abilities. The yin-yang release. Finally, Madara raised his hand, and black Zetsu oozed from his arm like liquid, merging with a nearby white Zetsu. "Think of him as half of me," Madara said, his voice faint. Black Zetsu grinned innocently. "Yes, yes. I am Madara-sama's will made manifest." Madara staggered forward, tearing away the cords that tethered him to the ghetto statue. Without the life force supplied by the statue, he collapsed onto a stone chair, his voice trembling. "That's enough. The rest is up to you. In the time before my resurrection, you will be Uchiha Madara." With those words, Madara exhaled his final breath, his once mighty presence now lifeless. The legendary figure who had shaken the shinobi world, who had terrified entire nations single-handedly, died unceremoniously in an obscure coma of the world. Still, Madara firmly believed he would return. "When I rise again, the world shall..." Cough, cough, cough. "Ah, whatever. I still owe someone a dance." Setsuna stood silently, gazing at his lifeless form. Her expression shifted subtly, though her thoughts remained inscrutable. The half-black, half-white Zetsu sidled up to her, flashing a wide grin. "Little Setsuna, ah, no, Madara-sama. What's our next move?" The white Zetsu covering Setsuna's body spiraled out to form a mask, concealing her stunning face. "Do what Madara must do," she replied coldly. Chapter 92, Uchiha Itachi. The moment Uchiha Setsuna's face was concealed by the white mass of Zetsu, her entire demeanor shifted. Even her voice seemed to change, as if someone had replaced the person speaking. "Didn't Nagato already take over Amegakure? Then why don't we take down a shinobi village of our own?" Her tone was chillingly identical to Madara's. As she spoke, an icy aura emanated from her, seeping outward and filling the air with tension. Her emotions surged, and mysterious black patterns began swirling within her eyes, slowly moving like ink dropped into water. "Let's start with Kirigakure," she declared coldly. Hearing this, Black Zetsu's thoughts stirred. Choosing Kirigakure, is it because her childhood friend was killed by shinobi from there? How petty women can be when it comes to grudges. Suppressing his inner thoughts, Black Zetsu smiled. "I understand, Madara-sama. I'll gather all the intelligence on Kirigakure for you as soon as possible." Konoha. At one of the village's training grounds, 2 figures sparred intensely, their movements so swift and precise that it was difficult to tell who had the upper hand. Obito stood on the sidelines, shouting encouragement. "Asuma! Don't trade punches with Guy. Look for an opening in his middle." Asuma gritted his teeth, clearly frustrated. "Easy for you to say. Guy's footwork is so damn solid he doesn't give me a single opening." When it became clear that Asuma couldn't gain an advantage, Obito switched his support. "Okay, Guy-san. Open with a dynamic entry, then hit him with the leaf-strong whirlwind. Go all out." Guy followed Obito's advice without hesitation, unleashing a flurry of moves that overwhelmed Asuma. With a final spinning kick, Asuma was sent sprawling to the ground, utterly defeated. The match ended decisively. Stretching out a hand, Guy helped the panting Asuma to his feet. "Well fought, Asuma." Asuma accepted the help with a wry smile, shaking his head. "Your taijutsu keeps getting scarier, Guy. How do you even train for this?" The 2 men walked toward the edge of the training grounds, where Obito waited with an eager grin. "Thanks for the tips earlier, Obito," Guy said with a nod. Obito grinned wider, waving off the gratitude. "No problem. That's what friends are for." Guy's thick brows twitched, his fighting spirit reigniting. Speaking of friends, Obito, it's been a while since we last sparred. How about it?" Obito hesitated for a moment before nodding. Taking off his jacket, he handed it to Rin, who stood nearby. "All right, Guy. Let's do this." But don't hold back, I want a real challenge. Guy punched the air in excitement, his voice booming. That's the spirit. Youth is meant to be unleashed. With a gleam in his eyes, Guy dragged Obito back onto the training field, leaving Asuma to shake his head in amusement. Lighting a cigarette, Asuma muttered, "Nothing beats a smoke after a good fight." Meanwhile, Rin and Kirino sat on the sidelines, sharing snacks and chatting casually. "So, Rin, how are things going between you and Obito?" Kirino asked, her tone playful. Rin paused mid-bite, wiping the corner of her mouth before answering. "Not much has changed, though lately." Her gaze shifted toward Obito on the field, and she leaned closer to Kirino, lowering her voice. "I've noticed he's been acting a little odd." Kirino blinked in surprise. "Odd? Don't tell me he's seeing someone else." Then, catching herself, she chuckled. "Not that anyone else would even look at Obito, he's kind of a dork." Rin laughed softly. "No, not like that. It's just, well..." Her expression turned slightly awkward as she recalled a strange scene she'd witnessed a few days ago. "I saw him burying his legs in the dirt like he was trying to plant himself in the ground. He stood there, completely still, basking in the sun." Kirino tried to imagine the scene and burst into laughter. "That actually sounds like something Obito would do. Maybe he's training to become one with nature." While the girls giggled, Asuma glanced their way. Seeing Kirino's bright smile, his heart skipped a beat. The cigarette in his hand burned down to the filter, but he didn't notice. Half an hour later, Kakashi arrived at the training ground. Without a word, he took Obito's place on the field, his expression cold as ever. Scratching the back of his head, Obito sighed awkwardly. "Still holding a grudge, huh?" Rin tugged on his sleeve, signaling it was time to leave. As they walked away hand in hand, Obito muttered to himself, "Guess I'll have to bribe him with a couple of Ika books." After dropping Rin off at her house, Obito wandered the streets aimlessly, muttering under his breath, "Man, I'm so stupid. I didn't think this through at all." His frustration stemmed from a decision he'd made recently, a self-imposed challenge to stand in the sun every day and imagine himself as a tree. Unfortunately, Konoha had been plagued by rainy weather lately, leaving his progress at a standstill. As he strolled along humming a nonsensical tune, he turned a corner and froze. "Wait, is that..." A familiar figure came into view, and Obito's face lit up. "Shizzle!" Hearing his name, Shizzle turned around, smiling brightly. "Obito Nelson." To Obito's surprise, a young boy stood beside Shisui, a child no older than 4 or 5, with delicate features and a mop of black hair. The boy's Uchiha crest was prominently displayed on his clothing. Recognizing the child immediately, Obito smirked. "A young Uchiha must be someone important." "This is Itachi," Shizzle introduced with a grin. "Fugaku-sama's son and my close friend." Obito nodded knowingly. "So, this is the famous Uchiha Itachi." Kneeling slightly, Obito gave the boy a kind smile. "Nice to meet you, Itachi." The boy bowed politely in return. "Nice to meet you too, Obito Simple." Shizzle clapped his hands together. "How about some dango?" "My treat." Obito grinned. "Great idea. Let's go." Itachi hesitated for a moment before nodding. Though he loved sweets, he rarely had the chance to indulge. As they headed off to the shop, Itachi's reserved demeanor slipped, his excitement bubbling just beneath the surface. Chapter 93, A Different Kind of Dojutsu. Regarding the issue of Kirigakure, the author considered switching to a different village for narrative purposes. However, from both a background and character perspective, Kirigakure is indeed the most suitable choice. Rest assured, the upcoming actions of Setsuna and Obito will take a completely different approach. The dessert shop. Itachi took a bite of the tricolored dango in his hand, his entire being immersed in its soft and chewy texture. The sweet but not overly rich caramel sauce, the delicate aroma of glutinous rice, and the finely chopped nuts inside. Obito nearly burst into laughter at the sight. Although Itachi tried his best to hide it, Obito could clearly see the joy in his eyes. Even though Itachi had already seen blood, deep down, he was still just a child. While Obito observed Itachi, Itachi was also observing him. Shizzle had often mentioned Obito in front of Itachi, speaking of him with great admiration. He described Obito as a guiding light, someone he aspired to emulate. Thus, Itachi had etched the name Obito firmly in his mind. To him, Shizzle was his role model. If Shizzle held his cousin Obito in such high regard, then Obito must be someone extraordinary. But after watching for a while, Itachi found himself slightly disappointed. The man named Obito in front of him, no matter how he looked, seemed so ordinary. Another round? Huh. It wasn't until Shusui's voice broke the silence that Itachi snapped out of his thoughts. He gave a slightly apologetic smile. Sorry, you too. I was lost in thought just now. Shizzle patted him on the shoulder with a grin. It's fine. No need to be so formal around me and Obito. My cousin was just asking if you'd like another serving of dango? Itachi glanced at the table in front of him, realizing only then that while deep in thought, he'd unconsciously finished all the dango on the table. His face flushed slightly. No, thank you, Obito-san. The three of them chatted, though most of the conversation was between Shizzle and Obito. Itachi listened quietly from the side, occasionally chiming in. He started to notice that there was indeed something unique about Obito. For instance, his thought process was entirely unconventional, so much so that Itachi couldn't quite figure out what he was thinking. After a while, Itachi found an excuse to stand up. I'll take my leave for now. I don't want to disturb the two of you, Shizzle-san, Obito-san. Itachi could sense that there were some topics Shizzle and Obito were hesitant to discuss in his presence. Obito smiled at him and offered, take a dango set with you for the road. Itachi hesitated for a moment but shook his head. There's no need, Obito-san. Obito's smile deepened. Take it. It's not every day I treat, so don't hold back. Shizzle nodded in agreement. Exactly. You don't know how rare it is to get Obito to treat anyone. Though Itachi's heart leaped with joy, he maintained a calm and composed expression as he nodded. Then, thank you for the treat. After Itachi left, Shursui nudged his cousin with a teasing grin. You must really like Itachi, huh? To actually treat him. Obito rolled his eyes. Go away. Since when did you start poking fun at me? But, he admitted with a smirk, that kid Itachi is pretty good, respectful, intelligent, a good kid all around. A few minutes later, Obito and Shursui left the dessert shop as well. Walking side by side along the street, they eventually reached a quiet, secluded area. Shizzle turned to his cousin and softly asked, Obito, do you know about the Mangekyo Sharingan? Obito's body tensed slightly, and he gave Shizzle a complicated look. Could it be? Without a word, Obito pulled Shizzle into a hug and whispered, I'm sorry, Shizzle. Shizzle let out a long sigh. So, you too. The sun slipped below the horizon, and night enveloped the land. In the eerie silence of a dark forest, Shursui's quiet voice echoed. I could only watch as he was consumed by the jutsu. Obito gave a bitter smile, his thoughts drifting to a certain someone. This is what war is. After a brief silence, Obito asked, what ability did your Mangekyo awaken? Shizzle's eyes revealed a black, four-pointed shuriken pattern. I can manipulate reality to some extent, based on my will. I call it Kodo Amatsukumi. He paused, his voice tinged with regret. I felt at the time that if I had enough power, I might have been able to rewrite a friend's death. Obito's heart skipped a beat. Isn't Kodo Amatsukumi supposed to be a jinjutsu that alters others' wills? How did it become a reality-altering dojutsu? In myths from another world, Kodo Amatsukumi was associated with divine creation, capable of altering existence itself. Obito's mind began to piece things together. Was it because Shizzle firmly believed that they, as brothers, could change everything? Could his unyielding resolve have shaped his ability? That must be it. Shizzle looked at his silent cousin and asked, Obito, you've awakened the Mangekyo too, right? What's your ability? Obito chuckled softly, leaning in and whispering one word. Classified. Shizit, 777. That's not fair, Obito. Obito shrugged nonchalantly. That's the lesson I wanted to teach you, life isn't fair. How about this, he suggested with a sly grin, if you beat me in a sparring match, I'll tell you. Shizzle immediately stood up. Deal! Don't you dare back out, Obito. Obito smirked confidently. Obito, always keep my word. Not that it matters if I lose, I'll just refuse again anyway. Under the moonlight, the two figures wrestled playfully, their bond shining brightly in the night. Land of Water, outside Kirigakure. Uchiha Setsuna cast a sidelong glance at Zetsu beside her. Are you sure the intel is accurate? Black Zetsu gave a seemingly earnest smile. Of course, Madara-sama. I guarantee that Kirigakure's latest defensive setup matches the information I provided. With your newly awakened dojutsu, taking Kirigakure will be a breeze. Setsuna snorted. If your intel proves accurate, then naturally. But if you're wrong... Her voice turned SCY. You'll have no reason to exist. With that, her bare feet moved silently as she made her way toward Kirigakure. Chapter 94, As Elusive as Mist. Watching Setsuna stride toward Kirigakure, Black Zetsu curled his lips into an amused smirk. Heh, I hope your abilities match the arrogance of your words, he muttered, letting out a theatrical sigh as he wiped away imaginary tears. Oh, my poor, frail mother, trapped alone for nearly a millennium. His voice broke into mock sobs, boo-hoo. White Zetsu, standing nearby, chuckled at the melodrama. Black Zetsu, your crying is truly unique. Shut up. Black Zetsu snapped. Oh, okay, White Zetsu mumbled, shrugging. Outside Kirigakure. Two gatekeepers, stationed at the village's entrance, squinted at the figure approaching. Their hands tightened instinctively around their weapons as they saw what appeared to be a humanoid dumpling walking toward them. One of the Kirigakure shinobi called out cautiously, Who are you? Setsuna's gaze swept over the two with an air of disinterest. Her crimson Mangekyo Sharingan glimmered faintly under the moonlight. The guards froze, their expressions twisting with visible conflict before fading into eerie calmness. Silently, they pushed open the gates, allowing her to enter without resistance. The defenses on the eastern side are weaker. Taking control should be instantaneous. Setsuna murmured to herself before striding purposefully toward the area. Her Mangekyo Sharingan, shaped like a near-circular four-pointed star, shimmered ominously. In the black of night, the eerie glow was particularly unsettling. Throughout her journey into the village, Setsuna encountered 3 patrol teams. Yet, she didn't even need to lift a finger. A single glance sufficed to incapacitate her targets, rendering them completely obedient. She raised her left hand, studying her pale, flawless skin, and let out a soft hum. These so-called Hashirama cells are truly remarkable. Despite the strain of using my ocular techniques, my eyes only feel slightly fatigued. Her gaze turned toward a towering building ahead the Mizuki's office, her target for the night. Silently infiltrating the Mizuki's office, Setsuna found a long-haired man diligently poring over documents at his desk. He exuded the composed demeanor of a leader wholly dedicated to his duties. A capable Kage indeed, she thought, a flicker of icy malice flashing through her eyes. The third Mizuki spoke without lifting his head. You're quite bold to come here alone and infiltrate Kirigakure. His voice carried a low, dangerous edge. But since you're here, you won't be leaving. A minute later, Setsuna was reclining casually in a chair, massaging her sore eyes. Behind her, the third Mizuki stood dutifully, rubbing her shoulders. Asterisk impressive for a Kage, Setsuna remarked. The chakra required to control you far exceeds what I used for those other shinobi. The Mizuki smiled faintly. You flatter me, but in the end, I still succumb to your power. Setsuna let out a pleased hum. Naturally. When the Mizuki's hand strayed toward her arm to adjust her posture, she slapped them away sharply. His brows furrowed in confusion. My lady, 7. A faint flush crept across Setsuna's face beneath her mask. That hand had almost touched somewhere inappropriate. That's enough. Stop! She turned abruptly, her crimson eyes glowing as she pierced through the Mizuki's consciousness, rifling through his memories with ease. The man offered no resistance, allowing her to explore his mind freely. After a moment, Setsuna opened her eyes, a shadow of doubt flickering across her. Features. What could this mean? Pushing aside her questions for the moment, she turned to the Mizuki. Who in your village do you hold in the highest regard as a successor? Someone you trust to take your position in the future? The Mizuki answered without hesitation. That would be Yagura Karatachi. He's an excellent shinobi, pure-hearted, gifted, and beloved by everyone. Yagura Karatachi, huh? Setsuna mused. Summon him here immediately. The Mizuki hesitated. Right now? Yes, Setsuna ordered firmly. Right now. Relenting, the Mizuki called out, Guards! 2 masked ANBUs swiftly entered the office, ignoring the peculiar sight of Setsuna lounging at the Mizuki's desk with her legs propped up. What are your orders, Mizuki-sama? One asked. Bring Yagura Karatachi here. Tell him I have something important to discuss. Yes. The ANBU departed without question. Things are going smoother than expected. Setsuna thought to herself. Her success stemmed from her Mangekyo Sharingan ability, a terrifyingly insidious ocular jutsu known as Hwanjinsen. With just a glance, she could implant a seed of desire into her target's heart. This seed would grow into a blossoming flower of compulsion, corrupting their will. What made this ability particularly sinister was that it left the victim's consciousness intact. They retained their autonomy yet obeyed her commands without question. Unless someone possessed a willpower vastly superior to hers or lived without any trace, Setsuna's jutsu was nearly impossible to resist. At her current level of chakra, she could maintain control over up to 30 individuals simultaneously. However, exceeding this limit required her to relinquish control over an existing target. I hope this Yagura Karatachi proves worthy of my attention, she murmured. 10 minutes later, a knock echoed at the door. Come in, the Mizuki called. The door opened to reveal a young man with green hair and striking violet eyes. His expression carried a hint of puzzlement. Mizuki-sama, you called for me? This was Yagura Karatachi. Setsuna studied the youth before her, a baby-faced shinobi with a scar beneath his left eye. She couldn't help but note how young he appeared, though she had learned from the Mizuki's memories that Yagura's skills far exceeded his age. Still, she thought wryly, kids these days, already throwing kunai while I'm still dealing with brats. Likewise, Yagura's gaze landed on Setsuna, and his heart skipped a beat. Who is this dumpling-faced stranger sitting in the Mizuki's chair? And why is Mizuki-sama standing beside them like an attendant? Chapter 95, The Fourth Hokage, Minato. The third Mizuki didn't say a word. He simply cast a long, deep gaze at Yagura. Yagura felt a chill run down his spine as every hair on his body stood on end. An instinctive sense of danger crept over him. Slowly, he began to back away, inching toward the door to leave the Mizuki's office. But in the next moment, the creature resembling a living dumpling suddenly flashed a red light in its eyes. Yagura's surroundings turned blood red, like he was drowning in an ocean of crimson. His consciousness began to waver as though he were sinking deeper and deeper into an abyss. A minute later, Yagura's eyes regained clarity. He scanned his body, occasionally patting himself as if confirming something. I am both Yagura and Setsuna now. This is such an odd feeling, he muttered. Setsuna watched the scene unfold before her, a moment of self-recognition for Yagura, or rather, for another version of herself. She was about to say something but nearly stumbled to the floor. Her head throbbed, and an overwhelming wave of exhaustion surged through her. This is far more draining than I expected," she murmured. Inserting a fragment of her consciousness into another's mind was a unique application of Setsuna's dojutsu. It allowed her to divide a part of her own awareness and implant it into another person using 10 seeds of desire as a vessel, thus creating an extension of herself. The Yagura before her now was essentially her avatar. Though Yagura still retained his previous memories, his personality and consciousness had been completely overwritten by Setsuna. 10 seeds of desire, lost forever. "Yagura, don't let me down," she whispered, almost to herself. Just as Setsuna spoke, a sharp glint flashed in the eyes of the third Mizukage behind her. From his sleeve, a kunal shot out, aimed directly at the unsuspecting Setsuna. "Damn it!" By the time Setsuna noticed the sudden rush of air from behind her, it was already too late to dodge. At the critical moment, Yagura threw a kunal, intercepting the Mizukage's attack just in time. Setsuna turned her gaze to the Mizukage, reinforcing her control over him. His previously sharp eyes turned blank once more, and then calmness returned. With a serene smile, the third Mizukage walked out of the office, heading off to intercept any approaching Kirigakure Umbu who might have heard the commotion. "Phew, that was close!" Setsuna exclaimed, patting her chest, clearly shaken. Yagura, with a slightly feminine pout, muttered, "What are you afraid of? With Hashirama cells in your body, he couldn't kill you even if he tried." Setsuna glared at him, her crimson eyes flashing. "Sure, I wouldn't die, but it would hurt like hell." Yagura smirked. Fair point. The Mizukage had managed to temporarily break free of Setsuna's control earlier because the act of dividing a part of her own awareness had left her original body in a weakened state. Hwanjinsen, while powerful, wasn't without its limitations. Without sufficient chakra or nourishment from strong desires, the ability would wither over time. In moments of weakness such as earlier, the controlled could seize the opportunity to resist, potentially breaking free. If not for Yagura's quick intervention, the Mizukage might have succeeded. This was precisely why Setsuna had gone to such lengths, sacrificing 10 seeds of desire to implant in Yagura. Hwanjinsen's control was reversible and inherently unstable, but it made the transformation irreversible, binding the target completely to her will. Setsuna glanced at Yagura, who coincidentally looked back at her. Their eyes met in an odd moment of synchronicity. "This shared awareness is truly bizarre," Setsuna muttered, shaking her head. Yagura chuckled dryly. "You think that's strange? Try being a man after living as a woman. Care to switch places and see for yourself?" Setsuna opened her mouth to retort but found herself at a loss for words. After a moment, she sighed. "You should go for now. We don't want anyone getting suspicious. Come back tomorrow, and I'll summon you again." "Got it," Yagura replied, nodding as he left the Mizukage's office. Alone, Setsuna propped her chin on her hand, her long legs swinging idly as she considered her next steps. "I can't stay here indefinitely. Once I clean up the traces of my intrusion, the rest will be up to Yagura," she mused. After making up her mind, she rapped her knuckles on the desk. The Mizukage, who had been standing guard outside, walked in with a smile. "What are your orders?" he asked. Setsuna's expression turned cold. "Eliminate the patrol team on the eastern side of Kirigakure and any shinobi within the Mizukage's building. Make sure they disappear without raising suspicion. After you've done that, pass the title of Mizukage to Yagura and end your life." The Mizukage continued to smile as he nodded. "Understood. I'll need a month to complete these tasks." "A month?" Setsuna let out a faint hum. "Fine. A month it is. Now come over and give me a shoulder massage as you wish." As the Mizukage's hands worked at her shoulders, Setsuna's thoughts wandered to another matter entirely. A month should be enough to confirm my suspicions. And if it turns out that they are behind this? Her crimson eyes flickered with a trace of loathing as she glanced at her pale left arm. Then I'll make sure they pay the price. In the early months of Konoha's 48th year, Sarutobi Hiruzen took full responsibility for the devastation that had befallen the Land of Fire during the war. He personally approached the daimyo and requested to resign as Hokage. After the traditional 3 refusals and 3 requests, the daimyo, seeing Hiruzen's sincerity, finally accepted his resignation. No one was more thrilled about this than Hiruzen's old friend Danzo. In the days that followed, Danzo allowed himself to fantasize about becoming Hokage, thinking, if Hiruzen nominates me, But his dreams were short-lived. Hiruzen had recommended his student, Namake's Minato, as the 4th Hokage. Danzo was furious. In his frustration, he even suggested Orochimaru would be a better candidate than Minato. However, neither Hiruzen, the daimyo, nor the council paid any heed to Danzo's protests. The decision to appoint Minato as the 4th Hokage was swiftly finalized. Storming out of the council chamber, Danzo and Hiruzen parted ways on bitter terms. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen smiled warmly at Minato, who was kneeling before him. Minato, Hiruzen said gently, I've always believed you embody the will of fire. I want to entrust Konoha's future and the future of the shinobi world to you. Will you accept this responsibility? Minato's breath quickened as he met Hiruzen's gaze. He nodded resolutely. I will. Chapter 96, 2 with murderous intent. Some readers think Setsuna's dojutsu is weak, but that's not entirely true. First, it's as if she has several extra lives. Second, applying her dojutsu on others is like a permanent, unbeatable upgrade of Kodo Ematsukumi. Lastly, she can implant her dojutsu into promising talents, allowing them to grow quickly. It may lack raw offensive power compared to other attack-focused dojutsu, but it's far from useless. Hokage's office. Minato spoke with a solemn tone. I will strive to live up to your trust, 3rd Hokage. I won't let you down. Hiruzen smiled warmly, nodding. I'm certain you'll do just fine. That's all, go on now. Yes, 3rd Sama. Minato stood, bowed respectfully, and left the Hokage's office. On his way home, he couldn't suppress the surge of emotions. His thoughts raced, brimming with excitement. As the 4th Hokage, he could finally begin to realize his ambitions and ideals. When Minato arrived home, Kushina emerged from the kitchen, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. What did the 3rd Hokage call you for? She asked, tilting her head. Then, with a teasing grin, she added, did he scold you again? Don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. Minato scratched the back of his head, his voice hesitant. Well, he asked me to become the 4th Hokage. Kushina nodded absent-mindedly, a knowing look on her face. Hokage, no big deal. Hold on a second. Her hands froze mid-motion, still holding the spatula. Her expression turned animated as she shouted. Wait a minute. What did you just say? Minato smiled gently. I've been officially appointed by the 3rd Hokage and the daimyo. I'm going to be the 4th Hokage. Her eyes widened, then sparkled with joy. Her lips curled into a grin before she lunged at him, throwing her arms around his neck. My husband is going to be Hokage. Yay! She bounced in his arms, overcome with excitement. Minato froze for a moment, startled. Hey! Hey! Calm down, Kushina. If you keep this up, I might just retaliate, he added, his tone teasing. Kushina tied back her fiery red hair, flashing a mischievous smile. Retaliate? Oh, I'd like to see you try. Bring it on! At the Nara clan. Obito and Shikayu were seated across from each other, playing a game of shogi. Both wore furrowed brows as they pondered their next moves. After a while, Obito sighed, setting down a piece in frustration. Why did I even come to play with you? This is torture. Shikayu chuckled, gathering the pieces back into the board. Don't sell yourself short, Obito. You're improving rapidly, almost as good as me now? Obito rolled his eyes. Yeah, right. Even you don't believe that. The two strolled to the grass outside, each holding a fizzy drink, chatting aimlessly. After a while, Shikayu put his drink down and glanced at Obito. They've finalized the choice for the fourth Hokage, though it hasn't been announced yet. Obito smirked knowingly. Let me guess. Minato Sensei, right? Shikayu nearly spilled his drink in surprise. Sharp as ever, Obito. I was going to keep it a secret. Yep, it's confirmed. Minato-sensei is the next Hokage. Obito drained his drink, his expression calm, but his eyes gleamed coldly. The opportunity he'd been waiting for was close at hand. Hokage building, rooftop ceremony. Minato stood before Hiruzen, wearing the ceremonial Hokage robes. Hiruzen, with a pleased expression, removed his Hokage hat and passed it to him. With both hands, Minato accepted the hat and placed it on his head. In the presence of Konoha's leadership, Hiruzen spoke solemnly. Konoha's future is now in your hands, fourth Hokage. Minato nodded with determination. I will dedicate my life to the village. He stepped forward to the edge of the platform, gazing at the massive crowd below. Removing the Hokage hat, he let his charisma shine through. The crowd erupted into deafening cheers. Fourth Hokage. Minato-sama is amazing. Long live the fourth. Among the villagers, Naruto was jumping up and down. That's my dad up there. A child next to him shouted, liar. That's my dad. Narutox 777. The child's father, 777. Grabbing his kid, the man delivered a swift scolding. Nearby, Obito struggled to contain his laughter. That kid, killing me with his wit. On the platform, Minato and Kushina exchanged a glance, their eyes meeting across the sea of villagers. Their world seemed to quiet, leaving only each other in focus. Kushina smiled softly. Once, she joked about being the wife of a Hokage. Now, that joke had become reality. Kirigakure, Mizuki's office. The third Mizuki entered the room, bowing respectfully despite being the rightful owner of the office. Setsuna-sama, I've taken care of those A and B you encountered. Uchiha Setsuna, lounging on the couch, nodded approvingly. Well done, third Mizuki. The controlled individuals had been ticking time bombs. If she left Kirigakure and her Hwanjins and Withers, they could cause trouble. Better to eliminate them altogether. Relieved by her praise, the Mizuki smiled nervously. Thank you, my lady. So, when should I take my leave? Setsuna let out a faint hum. I've changed my mind. Transfer your position to Yagura, then find an excuse to leave with me. The third Mizuki was a skilled warrior and strategist, raised under the tutelage of the first and second Mizukis. It'd be a waste to discard him. Keeping him close would not only serve practical purposes but also strengthen her dojutsu. Overjoyed, the Mizuki nodded fervently. Of course, my lady. I'm honored to serve you. What's your name? Setsuna asked lazily. Kujo Kuratsuru, he replied. Then I'll call you Kuratsuru, she said dismissively. Now, go handle the rest. I don't have time to linger here. Understood, my lady. After he left, Setsuna remained on the couch, her eyes half closed, radiating an intense murderous aura. Anyone who approached would feel their blood run cold. Chapter 97, Individual Paths. Kirigakure. Inside the Mizuki's office, Setsuna's eyes snapped open, a fleeting red glint flashing through her pupils. She quickly suppressed the anger threatening to spill over, her face settling into a mask of calm. But inside, the flames of her rage only burned hotter. These past days of silent investigation had confirmed her suspicions. Her childhood friend's tragic death wasn't some random attack, it was orchestrated. Deliberate. On that fateful day, several Kirigakure squads had supposedly been dispatched to completely unrelated locations. Yet those squads somehow ended up at the site of the ambush. Not just coincidence. It was impossible for those teams to appear there naturally, not when the locations they were assigned to were so far apart, practically worlds away. Someone had planned this. Carefully. Ruthlessly. And when Setsuna thought about how her friend's death ultimately drove her to join Madara's cause, did the mastermind behind it all even need to be named? It couldn't have been anyone other than Madara or perhaps White Zetsu who manipulated her. Would she have coincidentally stumbled upon her friend, caught in the deadly clutches of Rinnegan, without their machinations? Damn you, Uchiha Madara! She clenched her teeth, the image of his smirking face flashing in her mind. If it weren't for Black Zetsu and White Zetsu keeping her in check, she'd storm back to incinerate that treacherous Madara right now. But not yet. Fine, Madara. Enjoy your moment of triumph while it lasts. Her lips curled into a cold smile. When I have enough power, I'll strip you of everything you hold dear. You'll finally understand what it feels like to lose it all. Konoha. The Hokage's office was unchanged, but the person sitting behind the desk certainly wasn't. Obito stood with a mischievous grin, addressing the man before him. Minato-sensei, or wait, I should call you 4th Hokage now, shouldn't 17. Tell us, Hokage-sama, what's the important matter that requires the presence of your beloved disciples? Minato chuckled, his expression softening with fondness at his cheeky student's antics. Well, Obito, the reason I called you three here today is to discuss your future plans. Future plans? Rin tilted her head in curiosity. Minato nodded, intertwining his fingers thoughtfully. Yes. Since I'm now the Hokage, I won't be able to lead Team Minato anymore. You have a choice: remain together as a team, request a transfer, or pursue other paths. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Obito's grin widened knowingly. Was Minato-sensei offering to pull strings for them? In the shinobi world, they were already considered adults. Minato's question wasn't surprising, but the freedom to choose certainly was. The three of them lowered their heads, deep in thought. Rin was the first to speak. Minato-sensei, I'd like to stay in the village and train to become a medical ninja. Minato smiled gently, as if her answer was exactly what he'd expected. Rin had always been kind-hearted, more suited to saving lives than taking them. Becoming a medical ninja seemed like the perfect path for her. I understand. I'll arrange for you to begin your internship at the Konoha hospital tomorrow. Rin beamed. Thank you, Minato-sensei. Next, Kakashi spoke up. Minato-sensei, I'd like to join your personal ANBU squad. Minato's eyes lit up in approval. Excellent. My squad has an open position, so you can join as soon as you're ready? Given Kakashi's talents and sharp mind, Minato had no doubt he'd become one of his most trusted operatives in no time. Finally, Minato turned to his last student, anticipation evident in his gaze. What about you, Obito? Have you decided? Obito scratched his head awkwardly but grinned. Actually, I'd like to join the 3rd Hokage's ANBU. Minato blinked, clearly caught off guard. The 3rd's ANBU? Even Rin and Kakashi looked at Obito in surprise. Rin couldn't help but ask, why, Obito-kun? Isn't it better to? I have my reasons, Obito interrupted, his tone deliberately vague. He couldn't exactly admit he had other plans brewing. Kakashi shot him a skeptical look. You're just trying to avoid working with me, aren't you? Obito could only offer an awkward laugh. After a tense pause, Minato sighed and gave a reluctant nod. If that's what you want, I'll discuss it with 3rd Sama. It'll be up to him to approve. Though his words were supportive, the disappointment in Minato's expression was hard to miss. Obito forced himself to smile, brushing off the tension. Thank you, Minato-sensei. Minato gave a faint smile in return. All right, you're all dismissed. Remember to keep training and never let your skills grow rusty. Yes, Minato-sensei, the three chorused. As they exited the Hokage's office, Kakashi frowned at Obito. Why did you choose the 3rd's ANBU? Minato-sensei is obviously the better option. Obito avoided the question, waving it off. You'll understand someday. Kakashi's sharp gaze lingered before he scoffed. Humph. You'd better have a good reason. I'm leaving. With a curt nod to Rin and Obito, Kakashi walked away. Since his last incident covering for Obito had made him the village laughingstock, spending time around Rin had become uncomfortable. Rin watched Kakashi leave before turning to Obito. Sensing his heavy mood, she gently took his hand and smiled. Obito-kun, do you think I'll make a good medical nin? Obito grinned, his earlier gloom evaporating. Of course. It's a great job, stable, good hours, great pay. Plus. He trailed off, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes. Rin tilted her head, curious. Plus what? Nothing. Nothing at all, Obito said, laughing to himself. In truth, he couldn't help but imagine Rin in a medical uniform, ready to play along with some creative doctor-patient scenarios. What a dream come true. Rin frowned suspiciously at his sudden change in mood. Obito-kun, you'd better not be hiding something. Obito waved her off, still chuckling. Nope, not at all. Obito! Tell me! Rin pouted, pulling at his sleeve. Never! Obito declared, darting off with Rin chasing after him. Chapter 98, Joining the Umbu, codename Hawk. There's an old saying, a man softens when fed by another. That was Obito's current predicament. All right, I'll tell you, Obito finally relented, leaning closer to Rin and whispering into her. Here. Asterisk whisper whisper whisper. Rin's face turned an even deeper shade of red after hearing him. Obito-kun. What are you thinking about all day? She exclaimed before narrowing her eyes suspiciously. Wait a minute, did Kakashi tell you about this? Obito adopted a pensive look, scratching his head. After a moment, he nodded decisively. Yep. Totally him? Selling someone out once is selling them out forever. Why stop now? Obito mentally reassured himself. Don't worry, brother. I've welded this blame onto you tighter than a Hokage-level seal. Rin jabbed her finger against Obito's forehead, placing her hands on her hips with a stern expression. You! I told you before not to let him influence you. But you still, ugh. Rin huffed. Obito grinned cheekily. Ah, Rin-chan, don't be mad. Rolling her eyes dramatically, Rin turned her head away. Humph, I am mad. PH-. Her words were abruptly cut off as Obito hugged her, flipping her own tactics against her. After a few minutes, Obito finally let go of the thoroughly flustered Rin, who looked as if steam would start coming out of her ears. He chuckled, his tone light-hearted. Feeling better now, Rin-chan 7. Rin nodded dazedly, her expression adorably vacant. Obito couldn't help but stifle a laugh. A short while later, Rin seemed to regain her composure and asked hesitantly, Obito-kun, those thoughts you mentioned earlier. Did you really mean them? Obito blinked, unsure where this was going, but, following his truthful nature, he nodded earnestly. Yes. Then. Rin stood on tiptoe, bringing her lips close to his ear and whispering in a soft, teasing voice. Then in a few days, we can whisper whisper whisper. The words sent a shiver of excitement down Obito's spine, making him feel like he wanted to fast. Forward to a few days immediately. That evening, Obito was unexpectedly summoned by the third Hokage. Sarutobi Hiruzen, dressed in casual robes rather than his ceremonial attire, guided Obito along the quiet village streets, much like he had when taking the boy out for training. Obito, Hiruzen began with a smile, I heard you wish to join my umbu. May I ask why? Without missing a beat, Obito replied, because Minato-sensei is way too strict. I figured working under you would be much more relaxed, Grandpa Hokage. Hiruzen burst into hearty laughter. Oh, Obito, the umbu is anything but relaxed. Regardless of whose orders you follow, the work is always demanding. Obito's face fell into a pout. Ah, if I'd known that earlier, I wouldn't have picked the Umbu. He glanced at Hiruzen mournfully. Grandpa Hokage, can I change my mind? Hiruzen stroked his beard, his eyes twinkling with amusement. I'm afraid it's too late, my boy. Patting Obito's head, he continued, don't worry. I'll give you a few days to relax before your official assignment starts. Come report to the Umbu next week. Like a farmer delighting in the arrival of fresh crops, Hiruzen had no intention of letting his latest recruit escape. He simply wanted to understand why Obito had chosen him over Minato. Obito sighed dejectedly. Fine, Grandpa Hokage. Ruffling the boy's hair, Hiruzen reassured him, don't fret. I'll ease you in with simpler tasks to start. Hearing this, Obito finally relaxed and let out a sigh of relief. Phew, that's good, then. After circling the village a few more times with Hiruzen, they eventually parted ways. On the way home, a sharp glint flashed in Obito's eyes. Joining the third Hokage's Umbu had been part of his plan all along. By placing himself under Hiruzen's supervision, he could observe his movements closely. This wasn't just about dealing with Danzo, it was also a precaution for the Uchiha clan's future. Even though the Ninetales incident is now unlikely, it doesn't mean. Obito frowned, shaking his head. The third's distrust of the Uchiha will simply disappear. The history between the Uchiha clan and the Hokage line couldn't be ignored. While the first Hokage treated the Uchiha like family, the second Hokage Tobirama took a more pragmatic approach. Despite his claims of Uchiha being inherently evil, Tobirama cleverly employed divide-and-conquer tactics to control the clan. He promoted Uchiha who adhered to the will of fire, gaining loyalty from some while alienating others. Hiruzen, on the other hand, had adopted a more precarious balancing act. Instead of nurturing internal Uchiha allies, he relied on other clans to suppress them, only deepening the rift. Thankfully, Minato-sensei seems more open-minded towards us, Obito muttered to himself. He clenched his fists. Once Danzo is dealt with, I'll need to change the third Hokage's perspective on the Uchiha. As he mulled over these heavy thoughts, Obito let out a long sigh. I'm still only 15 years old. Why do I have to carry such burdens? Life isn't fair. A week later, Obito arrived at the Umbu headquarters. Walking down the dimly lit corridors, he reached the equipment room, where an Umbu operative handed him a box. Your codename is Hawk. Record it yourself, the operative instructed curtly. Got it. Thanks. Obito carried the box to the dressing room, where he sulked up. As he donned the mask and examined his reflection, a mischievous grin spread across his face. No. Tiger stripes this time, but I've got an Umbu mask instead. This might actually be fun. Chapter 99, A Mysterious Visitor. Kirigakure. A group of shinobi huddled together, whispering amongst themselves. One of them sighed. That was so sudden. The third was in his prime. Why step down so abruptly? Another chuckled and teased, maybe all those years of overwork finally caught up to him. Guess even the strongest can't handle too much stress. Ha ha ha. The first shinobi shot him a look. Cut it out. The third Mizukage isn't like that. But then he leaned in conspiratorially, his voice dropping to a whisper. Although I did hear some rumors. You know, things only certain people might understand. Before the conversation could continue, a commanding voice interrupted. That's enough gossiping about the Mizukage. A more senior shinable, clearly their leader, stepped forward. His stern gaze silenced the group instantly. The third dedicated his life to this village. Show some respect. And Yagura's appointment as the fourth Mizukage? That's what's best for Kirigakure. So keep your baseless chatter to yourselves. The two shinobi immediately straightened up, their playful demeanor gone. Understood. Yeah. We're fully behind Yagura-sama. We were just feeling a little sorry for the third, that's all. The sudden resignation of the third Mizukage, Kujo Kuratsuru, had indeed stirred a flurry of curiosity in the village. Still, the transition of power seemed seamless, as Yagura had long been groomed for the position. When news spread that Kuratsuru planned to leave the village to enjoy retirement after a lifetime of battles, most found it understandable. Surely, he deserved a peaceful life after such service. Inside the Mizuki's office, Kuratsuru stood with a smile, addressing a figure seated in the Mizuki's chair, Uchiha Setsuna. "Everything is prepared, my lord. We can leave whenever you're ready." Setsuna rose from the chair with a calm nod. "There's no time to waste. I've lingered here long enough." Kuratsuru bowed slightly. "As you command." Setsuna turned to Yagura, who stood quietly to the side. "The village is yours now. Take good care of it." Yagura gave a curt nod, his expression impassive. "Humph. I will." Without another word, Setsuna adjusted the straps of the travel pack on her shoulder and motioned for Kuratsuru to follow. As they left the office, Yagura watched them from the window, his gaze turning cold and intense. "Uchiha Madara, one day, I'll make you pay for everything." He sat down at the Mizuki's desk, closing his eyes as dark memories surfaced. A night long ago. Her childhood friend, surrounded by enemies. By the time Setsuna arrived, her friend had already fallen, his body bloodied and lifeless. The enemy shinobi didn't leave. They mocked the corpse, toying with it as if it were a mere object. In the agony of that moment, Setsuna's dormant Mangekyo Sharingan awoke, granting her the fearsome dojutsu, Wanjinsen. Fueled by rage, she manipulated the enemy shinobi, forcing them to tear each other apart in gruesome fashion. For a brief moment, she felt the satisfaction of revenge. But it was fleeting. Konoha. The ANBU headquarters buzzed with quiet activity as Obito Uchiha adjusted his gear. After securing his equipment, he made his way to leave when another ANBU operative stopped him. "Hey, rookie! You forgot something important." Obito raised a brow. "Everyone's wearing masks. How do you know I'm the new guy?" The operative pointed to his left arm. Obito glanced down and realized, with dawning embarrassment, that everyone else had a tattoo on their arm. Men had theirs on the left arm, women on the right. "Ah, of course. A totally normal initiation," he muttered. "Where do I get it done?" he asked the operative. The shinobi smirked, pointing toward a small room. "Right over there." 5 minutes later, Obito emerged pale and sweating, his new tattoo burning on his arm. "That hurt like hell," he muttered to himself, massaging the fresh ink. Still, as he inspected it, a small grin crept onto his face. "Well, this is just the start. I'll rise through the ranks ANBU captain next year, commander in 2 years. And in 10 years? Hokage, baby." Feeling a surge of ambition, he made his way to report to the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, who now worked from his luxurious home office. Hiruzen greeted him with a grandfatherly smile. "Ah, Obito. You look ready for action. I'm counting on you." Obito scratched his head sheepishly, chuckling. "You can count on me, Hokage-sama." The third nodded approvingly but kept the assignments light, allowing Obito a chance to settle in. One day, in the quiet of his home, Obito summoned the system, a hint of irritation in his tone. "Hey, system bro. It's been weeks. Where are my new missions?" The system sighed heavily. "Obito, your strength is already nearing the limits of this world. Isn't that enough?" Obito scoffed. "I'm 15 and not even close to 6 paths level. How is that enough?" Fine. Complete your current tasks, and I'll give you a new set of options." Obito grinned. "Deal." A month later, after an exhausting mission, Obito returned home only to find an unexpected guest waiting for him. Chapter 100, the year Konoha 49. Obito stared at the young boy in his room, his surprise evident. "Chi? What are you doing here?" His grandmother chuckled warmly from the side. "Oh, Obito, you're finally back. Little Itachi has been waiting for you for a while now." Obito scratched his head, clearly confused. "Itachi came all this way to find me, but why?" Grandma, ever the considerate host, prepared 2 small teacups and a pot of hot water for them. Then she stood up, smiling. You two have a good chat. Grandma's going to rest in my room. Itachi, ever polite, gave her a slight bow. Thank you for your hospitality, grandmother. Goodbye. Once she had gone, Obito tilted his head and asked curiously. Itachi, what brings you here today? Itachi's expression remained calm as he replied. My father sent me. He hopes you'll become the Uchiha clan's eyes within the ANBU. He paused briefly before continuing. Father also asked me to pose a question to you, in your heart, which weighs heavier, our clan or the village? Obito's expression shifted as realization dawned. After a moment of contemplation, he answered solemnly. The clan comes above all else. Please tell Fugaku-sama that I will pass on information for him. Itachi nodded thoughtfully. I will convey your words to my father, word for word. Then, his tone changed, growing more personal. Next, on my own behalf, I'd like to ask you a question, Obito Simple. Obito gestured for him to proceed. Go ahead. Itachi's gaze was sharp and penetrating as he asked. Why is it that what you just said differs so drastically from what Shizzle told me about you? Oh. Obito winced internally. Right. I forgot how close Itachi and Shisui are. This time, his silence wasn't feigned. He genuinely needed to think. After a long pause, he finally spoke. The conflict between the Uchiha and the village has only grown sharper over time. Someone is always caught in the middle, torn between both sides. But his voice deepened, carrying weight. I personally believe this is an issue for our generation to resolve. We shouldn't let the next generation bear this burden. Itachi mulled over Obito's words, chewing them over as though savoring their depth. It was only now that he began to understand why Shizzle held Obito in such high regard. Calm under pressure, insightful, decisive. Itachi stood and gave a small bow. I see. Thank you for your time, Obito Simple. I'll take my leave now. Obito stood as well, grinning. No trouble at all. If you ever have questions, feel free to come find me. As he watched Itachi walk away, Obito let out a quiet chuckle. Eyes for the Uchiha, huh, 7. He shook his head and returned to his room to rest. Tomorrow promised to be another tiring day. In the present, Obito, now an ANBU member, had access to some of the most up-to-date information. For instance, the large-scale conflicts between the major nations had recently subsided, leaving only isolated skirmishes. The shinobi world was finally at peace, or so it seemed. But Obito remained vigilant, ever cautious of Uchiha Madara's potential schemes. He couldn't let his guard down, fearing another Ninetales incident. Yet, as the days turned into months and Konoha reached its 49th year, everything remained calm. Seems like Madara might have given up, or perhaps attacking Konoha was never part of his plan to begin with, Obito mused. After all, Minato-sensei and Kushina-sensei hadn't shown any signs of wanting a second child. So, a fully healthy Ninetales Jinchuriki paired with the fastest shinobi in the world? Obito smirked at the thought. Yeah, no one's crazy enough to mess with that. Thinking back to his own ill-fated attempt, Obito couldn't help but grimace. He had only dared to act because Kushina was weakened at the time. And even then, Minato had shown up immediately, forcing him to flee. Honestly, I'm lucky I survived at all, Obito muttered to himself. For now, at least, the village seemed safe. Over the past year, Obito hadn't been idle. Not only had he passed the Jonin exam, but he had also earned a promotion to ANBU squad leader. Every step brought him closer to his dream of becoming Hokage. But right now, he had a bone to pick. Hey, system, he shouted. Why is today's task still incomplete after all this time? The system's voice rang out, dripping with exasperation. Do you think trees complain when they have to stand still? Obito. He resigned himself to the task, silently fuming. Finally, the familiar notification tone rang in his head. Choice complete. Reward, Stage 2 development. Significantly reduces camel's strain on the host's body. Mid-level would release techniques are now available. T/N, it is about Hashirama cell development stages. Stage 1, reduces Camer's physical toll. Grants access to basic would release. Stage 2, significantly reduces Camel's toll. Grants access to mid-level would release. Stage 3, completely eliminates Camer's toll. Grants access to advanced would release. Stage 4, unlocks Hashirama's full would release capabilities and the user's unique Rinnegan. Yes, Obito cheered, tears of joy streaming down his face. He could feel the difference immediately. Camel was far less taxing, and his chakra reserves had increased substantially up to 12 units now. While that might pale in comparison to someone like Kushina or Naruto, it was still an impressive amount for most shinobi. Alright, system, Obito said eagerly. I've finished that task. What's next? Silence. System? Hello? Still nothing. Don't leave me hanging. Come on out. Obito roared, his temper flaring. Damn it. I trusted you, and you betrayed me. Fueled by frustration, Obito activated Kamet and vanished, heading straight for the land of rain. It was time to let off some steam. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 6. Peace.